Hell's Angel found two children, imprisoned in their own home. The person behind it will shock you. The engine of Marcus Hale's motorcycle rumbled like distant thunder as he rolled down Sycamore Lane. It was a warm Saturday afternoon, and the kind of neighborhood stretched around him that looked like it came straight off a greeting card. Neat lawns, flower boxes in windows, a sprinkler ticking back and forth across a perfectly green yard 2 houses down. Marcus didn't belong here. He knew that. He could feel it in the way a woman walking her small dog crossed to the other side of the street without looking at him. His Hell's Angel's vest was worn and dark, covered in patches that told stories most people never wanted to hear. His face was weathered, carved by years of sun and wind and hard living. He had a thick beard going gray at the edges and hands that were permanently stained from engine grease no amount of scrubbing could fully remove. But he wasn't here to cause trouble. He was here to deliver a motorcycle. The bike hitched to his trailer was a 1972 Triumph Bonneville, cherry red, fully restored. It belonged to an elderly man named Harold Pruitt, who had called Marcus's shop 6 months ago with a voice full of nostalgia and hope. Marcus had spent 80 hours on that bike, every bolt cleaned, every wire checked, every inch of chrome polished until it caught the light like something brand new. Before you continue listening, please let me know where in the world are you watching from today. Now back to the story. Harold had been standing on his front porch waiting. The old man's hands had trembled when Marcus walked him around the Bonneville. His eyes had gone glassy and soft. He'd pressed a firm handshake into Marcus's hand and said, "Son, you gave me back something I thought was gone forever." Marcus didn't say much. He never did. He just gave Harold a single nod and began unhitching the trailer. That was the job. Quiet work, honest work, the kind that didn't require a lot of words. He climbed back onto his bike 20 minutes later and started down the street toward the highway. The afternoon sun was warm on his shoulders. Somewhere nearby, a lawnmower hummed. A dog barked twice, then went quiet. That's when he saw it. The house sat near the end of the block, like something the neighborhood had tried to forget. Every other yard on Sycamore Lane was tidy and cared for. This one was not. The grass had gone long and yellow, drooping over the edges of cracked concrete. A mailbox at the end of the driveway was stuffed so full that envelopes had spilled out and scattered across the ground. A few had blown against the base of a dead rose bush. The windows were covered. Dark fabric or heavy curtains. Marcus couldn't tell which, but every single window on the ground floor was blocked completely. The paint on the front door was peeling. The porch boards looked soft and gray with age. He slowed his bike. He didn't know why exactly. Something in his chest just made him slow down. Maybe it was the years of seeing things that didn't add up. Maybe it was instinct built from a lifetime of watching for danger. Whatever it was, he pulled his bike to the curb across from the house and sat there a moment with the engine idling. Then he looked up. The upstairs window was different from the rest. The curtain there had been pushed aside, just enough. And behind the glass stood a little girl. She was small and thin, with dark circles beneath her eyes and hair that hadn't been brushed in some time. Beside her stood an even smaller boy, his face pale, his eyes wide. The girl was holding something against the glass. A piece of cardboard, torn on one side, the words written in thick black marker, the letters shaky but clear. "Please don't leave." Marcus felt something shift inside his chest, something quiet but powerful, like a gear finally catching. He cut the engine. He swung off the bike and walked slowly across the street, keeping his movements easy and unhurried. He didn't want to frighten them. He stopped at the edge of the overgrown lawn and looked up at the window. The girl didn't move. Neither did the boy. They just watched him with those careful, exhausted eyes. Marcus raised one hand in a slow, open wave. The girl lowered the sign slightly, watching him. He stepped closer. The porch steps groaned under his boots as he approached the front door. He reached out and touched the door handle, but it didn't give. He looked down. A heavy chain had been looped through the door handle, and a metal bracket bolted to the frame. A padlock, thick and rusted along the edges, held the whole thing shut. The chain was on the outside. Marcus stood very still for a moment. He stared at the padlock. Then he took a slow breath and stepped back off the porch, moving to stand beneath the upstairs window where the children could see him clearly. "Hey," he said. His voice was low and calm. "My name is Marcus. I'm not going anywhere." The girl pushed the window open a few inches. The wood was swollen and it scraped loudly, but she worked it until there was a gap just wide enough to speak through. "You're not going to call somebody?" she whispered. "Not yet," Marcus said. "First, I want to hear from you, okay?" She studied him for a long moment. Her eyes moved over his vest, his tattoos, his size. Whatever she saw seemed to weigh heavily against whatever she had been taught to believe. "I'm Ava," she finally said. "That's Noah." The little boy pressed closer to the glass. He was holding something. A glass jar with a red lid, the inside scraped nearly clean. Peanut butter. Maybe a spoonful left at the bottom. "How long have you two been in there?" Marcus asked. Ava's jaw tightened. "Weeks," she said quietly. "Our grandma leaves food sometimes, on the porch, but she doesn't come in." "Where's your mom?" Something moved across the girl's face. Pain, or maybe something older than pain. The kind of feeling a 9-year-old shouldn't have to know. "She's gone," Ava said. "She got sick after the accident. Grandma said she went away. She said Mom chose a new life and didn't want us anymore." She paused, and her voice dropped even lower. "Grandma said we had to stay inside. She said if anyone found us, dangerous people would take us away somewhere bad." Marcus kept his face steady. He didn't let the anger show. "Not now." "Your grandma," he said carefully. "She's not here right now?" Ava shook her head. Noah held up the jar again. His expression wasn't dramatic. That was the part that hit hardest. He just held it up the way a person holds up a fact. "This is what we have. This is what is left." Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. Ava's breath caught. "No!" Her voice went tight and fast. "Please, please don't call anyone. Grandma said they'll take us somewhere and we'll never see each other again. Please!" Marcus looked at her. He didn't move. He didn't argue. He lowered the phone. "Ava," he said. Her name, just that, spoken like it meant something. "Look at me." She looked. "I am not going to do anything without telling you first. Whatever I do next, I'm going to explain it to you before I do it. You have my word on that." Marcus didn't move from his spot beneath the window. He just stood there on the patchy yellow grass, hands loose at his sides, letting the children look at him as long as they needed to. "You said your name is Marcus?" Ava asked. "That's right." "What's on your jacket?" He glanced down at his vest, then back up at her. "It's called a cut. The patches tell people which club I ride with. The Hells Angels." He paused. "I know that probably sounds scary. I'm guessing your grandma's told you to stay away from people like me." Ava didn't deny it. "I fix motorcycles for a living," Marcus continued. "I was just down the street dropping one off for an old man named Harold. He cried a little when he saw it." He let that sit for a second. I wasn't planning on stopping here. I just saw you in the window. Ava was quiet. Noah leaned against her shoulder, and Marcus could hear the boy's breathing from where he stood. It had a thickness to it, a heaviness that didn't belong in a 7-year-old's chest. How's Noah doing? Marcus asked. Honest answer. Ava looked at her brother, then back at Marcus. He was coughing last night. A lot. He felt warm this morning, but I don't have a thermometer. Her voice stayed flat and controlled, the way someone talks when they've been holding fear in place for so long it starts to feel normal. I've been giving him water. We still have water. Good. You did good. Marcus kept his voice steady. But that cough and the fever, that's his body telling us it needs some help. The kind of help I can't give him standing out here in the yard. Noah blinked down at him. The boy didn't look afraid of Marcus exactly. He looked like someone who had used up most of his energy just making it to the window. The downstairs doors, Marcus said. Are they chained too? Ava nodded. The windows down there are nailed shut. Grandma did it before she left last time. Her chin lifted slightly, like she was daring the words not to hurt her. She said it was for our protection. She said there were dangerous people connected to my mom. People who might try to get to us through her. She said if anyone found us, they'd separate us and put us somewhere terrible. Marcus took a slow breath through his nose. He looked at the padlock again. Then he looked back up at Ava. I need to call for help, he said. I want you to know that before I do it. Her face went rigid. You promised. I promised I'd tell you before I did anything, and I'm telling you right now, to your face. His voice didn't waver. Noah needs a doctor, Ava. That's not something I can talk my way around. But I am not going anywhere. I will be standing right here when they arrive. Nobody is going to come at you without me explaining who they are first. She stared at him. Her eyes were filling, but she blinked hard and fast, fighting it back. You don't know that, she said. You're right. I can't promise what other people will do, but I can promise what I'll do. He looked straight at her. I stay. Before Ava could answer, a sharp voice cut across the yard. Hey, what do you think you're doing? Marcus turned slowly. A woman was standing at the edge of the property. She was around 50 or so, wearing a pale blue cardigan despite the heat, arms folded tight across her chest. Her eyes moved from Marcus to the chained door and back again, hardening with every second. I saw you messing with that door, she said, her voice rising. I'm calling the police. Please do, Marcus said. That stopped her. She blinked. Marcus stepped aside from the door and gestured upward toward the window. But first, he said, calm and even, look up there, look at the children. The woman hesitated. Then she looked. Ava was still at the window. She had lifted the cardboard sign again without being asked. Please don't leave. Noah stood beside his sister, one hand pressed against the glass, breathing in that slow and labored way. Even from the yard, the sound of his cough carried in the still afternoon air. The woman's hand went to her mouth. Her whole posture changed, the stiffness going out of her all at once like air from a tire. Oh, she breathed. Oh, my God. My name is Marcus Hale, he said. I stopped because I saw them in the window. I haven't touched that door except to find out it's chained from the outside. He kept his voice measured. If you call it in yourself, there's a witness. Someone who can say exactly what they saw. That matters. The woman was already pulling her phone from her cardigan pocket. Her fingers were shaking. She dialed and lifted it to her ear, and her eyes never left the children in the window. Yes, I need police and an ambulance, she said. Her voice cracked once, then steadied. Sycamore Lane. There are 2 children locked inside a house. Marcus turned back to the window. Ava, he said. You hear that? She nodded. Her eyes were red at the edges now. That lady right there called for help. People are coming, and I am still here. He held her gaze. Every single person headed this way right now is coming because you were brave enough to hold up that sign. In the distance, the first siren began to wail. Marcus didn't look toward the sound. He kept his eyes on Ava and his feet planted in the yard, exactly where he said he would be. The sirens got louder fast. 2 police cruisers turned onto Sycamore Lane within minutes, followed closely by a fire truck and an ambulance. They rolled to a stop in front of the house, one after another, filling the quiet street with flashing lights and the crackle of radios. Marcus stayed exactly where he was. A young officer was out of his cruiser before the engine cut off, hand resting near his belt as he crossed the yard toward Marcus. His eyes swept the vest, the patches, the tattoos on Marcus's forearms. Sir, I need you to step back from the structure. My name is Marcus Hale, Marcus said, steady and calm. I'm the one who found them. The woman in the blue cardigan is Denise Carter. She lives next door. She placed the call. Neither of us has touched anything except the front door handle. He stepped back 2 paces without being asked. The chain and padlock are on the outside. Firefighters will want to photograph it before they cut it. The officer studied him for a moment. Then he turned toward the door and saw the chain for himself. A second officer had already approached Denise, notebook out. She was speaking quickly, her hands moving as she described what she had seen from the yard. Marcus heard her say his name twice. Both times she was clear that he had not broken in. Both times she said the children were already at the window when she arrived. A firefighter crouched near the padlock and took photographs while 2 more waited with bolt cutters. The chain was heavy. Whoever had put it there wanted it to hold. Marcus turned back to the window, but Ava and Noah were gone. He felt the absence of them like a cold drop in his chest. One of the paramedics, a young woman with a calm face, moved toward the front door. Marcus stepped forward. "Hold on a second," he said. The officer nearest him started to object. Marcus kept his voice even. "Those kids have been told their whole lives that strangers would hurt them. The little girl is 9. She's been protecting her brother on her own for weeks. If a group of people she doesn't know come through that door talking loud and moving fast, she's going to panic." He looked at the paramedic, then the officer. "Let me speak to her from the stairs first. Just give me that." There was a pause. The senior firefighter on scene, a broad-shouldered man with gray at his temples, gave a small nod. They cut the chain. The front door swung open onto dim, stale air. Marcus stepped inside first while the others held at the threshold. The smell hit him immediately. Spoiled food and stagnant heat, and the sourness of a house that had been shut too long. "Ava," he called from the base of the stairs. He kept his voice low and unhurried. "It's Marcus. I'm standing at the bottom of your stairs. Nobody's coming up until you say it's okay." Silence. Then, from behind a closed door at the top of the steps, the scrape of something heavy being dragged across the floor. She had wedged a chair under the handle. "Smart," Marcus said quietly, mostly to himself. "I can hear you." Ava's voice came through the door, tight and thin. "Good. The chain is off the front door. There are police officers and paramedics outside. Nobody has come in except me." He paused. "No one needs them, Ava. You know he does." A long silence. Then the scrape of the chair moving back. The door opened. Ava stood in the doorway barefoot, her hair tangled, wearing a faded green shirt that was too small for her. Behind her, Noah sat on the edge of a bare mattress, his back against the wall. Both of them were pale. The room around them told the whole story without a single word being spoken. Empty cracker sleeves on the floor, a jar with a smear of peanut butter at the bottom, granola bar wrappers flattened and folded neatly, like she had been organizing them just to have something to do. Noah tried to stand when he saw Marcus. He made it halfway up before his legs gave. Marcus crossed the room in 3 steps and caught him before he went down. The boy was light in a way that made something tighten painfully behind Marcus's sternum. Noah's arms found Marcus's neck and held on. "I got you," Marcus told him. "I got you, bud." The paramedics were up the stairs now. The young woman checked Noah quickly, her hands gentle and sure, and looked at Marcus. "You can bring him down." Marcus carried Noah downstairs and out into the afternoon light. He felt the boy's shallow breathing against his shoulder the whole way. Behind them, officers and firefighters moved through the house. Later, Marcus would hear the details as they were documented one by one. A refrigerator holding 2 soft apples, a row of condiment jars, and a carton of milk 2 weeks past its date. Windows covered with black garbage bags and nailed along the edges. Telephones unplugged and placed in a closet. Cabinet locks mounted high on the walls where small hands could never reach them. A house shaped like a cage. Outside, the paramedics settled Noah onto a gurney and began a proper assessment. Ava stayed close, her bare feet on the warm pavement, watching every move they made. Then the paramedic looked at Ava. "Sweetheart, we need you to come with us so a doctor can check you out too." Ava's eyes moved immediately to Marcus. He understood what she needed before she asked it. "I'll follow right behind the ambulance," he said. "You won't even lose sight of me at the first light." She looked at him for a long moment, searching his face the way someone does when they are deciding whether a thing is real. "You promise?" "I promise," Marcus said. Ava climbed into the ambulance. Marcus followed the ambulance the whole way. He kept his headlight steady in the rear window, close enough that Ava could see him every time the road curved. The late afternoon sun sat low and orange over the rooftops, throwing long shadows across the pavement. The ambulance moved quickly, but without sirens now. Noah was stable. That was what the paramedic had told Ava before the doors closed, and Marcus had watched the girl's shoulders drop maybe half an inch at those words. Half an inch was a lot for her. He pulled into the hospital parking lot 2 seconds behind the ambulance and locked his bike near the entrance. The automatic doors slid open and the cool air hit him. Fluorescent lights, antiseptic, the low hum of a busy place doing serious work. A nurse directed the gurney left. Another asked Marcus if he was family. "No," he said. She pointed him toward the waiting area. He went and he sat down in a plastic chair near the hallway entrance, where he could see the door to the treatment room. He was not going to leave. Nobody had told him he had to, and nobody was going to. 20 minutes passed. Then the treatment room door opened, and Ava appeared in the gap, still in her too small green shirt, searching the waiting area with sharp eyes. She found Marcus immediately. He raised one hand. She looked at him for a moment. Then she went back inside without a word. But she had looked. That was enough. A nurse came out a short while later and politely suggested that Marcus might be more comfortable waiting elsewhere. Marcus thanked her for the suggestion and did not move. The nurse glanced at his vest and patches, seemed to decide the matter was not worth pressing, and returned to her station. He called Bear from the waiting room chair. Raymond Callahan picked up on the second ring, his voice low and easy, like a man who had lived long enough to stop being surprised by most things. "Got 2 kids at Mercy General," Marcus said. "Boy is about 7, girl is 9. They need clean clothes, something soft, nothing stiff. And whatever the hospital will clear for food, bring options. Soup if you can get it warm. He paused. And maybe something to do with their hands. 20 minutes, Bear said, and hung up. He made it in 18. Bear was a big man, 60 years old, with a white beard trimmed short and a face that had more laugh lines than hard ones. He came through the automatic doors carrying a duffel bag in one hand and a paper bag in the other, moving with the unhurried ease of someone who had walked into difficult rooms before and planned to walk out of them just fine. He set everything down beside Marcus without ceremony. "Coloring books," he said, nodding at the duffel. "Markers, not crayons. Crayons break and then kids get upset. 2 changes of clothes each, I guessed the sizes, and the lady at the soup place on the 5th put lids on 2 bowls of chicken and rice." He settled into the chair beside Marcus. "They let you back there yet?" "Working on it." Bear nodded like that was exactly what he expected. A different nurse, older and less easily discouraged, emerged from the treatment room and approached them with the expression of someone about to ask a firm question. Marcus stood before she reached him. "My name is Marcus Hale," he said. "I found these children this afternoon. I have warm soup, clean clothes, and coloring books. The girl trusts me enough to check that I'm still here. That is the only credential I have, and I understand if it isn't enough." He held the paper bag slightly forward. "But the soup is getting cold." The nurse looked at the bag, then at Bear, then at Marcus. 5 minutes, she said. They were in there for 40. The treatment room was small and bright. Noah lay propped on pillows with an IV drip in his arm, his color already a shade better than it had been on the gurney. Ava sat in the chair beside his bed, legs pulled up, watching the door until Marcus came through it. Bear set the duffel on the floor and pulled out the coloring books without making a production of it. He put one on Noah's tray table and one in Ava's lap. Then he pulled up a chair and sat down like he had been invited. Noah looked at the coloring book. On the cover was a detailed drawing of a motorcycle, all clean lines and open road. Something in the boy's face shifted, quiet and wondering. "You like motorcycles?" Bear asked him, his voice easy and low. Noah nodded slowly. "Smart kid," Bear said. Marcus opened the soup containers and handed them over carefully. Noah took his with both hands and held it like it was something precious. Ava held hers without drinking for a moment, watching Marcus with that measuring look she had. Then she took a sip. Marcus sat down on the edge of the second chair and told them about the first engine he ever took apart. He was 9 years old, he said, same as Ava, and he had done it in his grandfather's garage on a Saturday morning without asking permission first. He got every piece off just fine and had them laid out in a perfect row on a shop rag. The trouble was he could not get them back together again. His grandfather came home to find a completely disassembled carburetor on the garage floor and 9-year-old Marcus sitting in the middle of it looking like a man facing a firing squad. Noah smiled into his soup. Bear contributed a story about the time he had tried to teach himself to change a tire in a parking lot in the rain, and ended up flagging down a 65-year-old woman in a church hat, who turned out to know more about lug nuts than he ever would. Ava made a short sound that was close to a laugh, and then seemed almost surprised at herself for it. The soup disappeared slowly and steadily. That was good. Marcus did not rush them. After a while, when the room had settled into something quieter and warmer, Ava stared at the lid of her empty cup. Her voice came out careful, like she had been deciding whether to say it for some time. "Our dad died," she said. "There was a car accident, a really bad one." Marcus did not fill the silence. He just listened. "Mom got hurt too, her back. The doctors gave her medicine and then she needed more medicine. And then she needed a lot of it." Ava turned the cup slowly in her hands. Grandma Evelyn said Mom went to a place to get better, but that she only went because she wanted a different life. Without us. Her voice did not break. It had the flat, careful sound of someone who had repeated something to themselves so many times it had worn smooth. Grandma leaves canned food on the porch sometimes, she added. She doesn't really come inside. Noah had stopped coloring. He was watching his sister with serious eyes. The door to the treatment room opened. A young hospital employee leaned in, her face uncertain in the way people look when they are delivering news they did not ask to carry. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said. "There's a woman at the front desk. She says her name is Evelyn Mercer." A short pause. "She's asking to see the children." Nobody moved for a second. Then Ava set her empty cup down on the tray table, slowly, like she needed her hands free. "That's Grandma Evelyn," she said. It was not a happy statement. It was not an unhappy one either. It was the voice of a child preparing herself for something she did not fully understand yet. Marcus looked at Bear. Bear looked back with calm, steady eyes that said, "Watch carefully." Evelyn Mercer came through the treatment room door about 2 minutes later, and she came in like a woman who had been crying in the car the whole drive over and had only just composed herself enough to walk upright. She was 63 years old, with neat silver hair pinned back and a pale blue cardigan over a collared blouse. A laminated badge clipped near her shoulder read "Volunteer" in cheerful green letters above the logo of a church Marcus did not recognize. Her eyes went straight to the children. "Oh," she said. Her voice broke just enough. "Oh, my babies." She moved to the bed with both arms open. Noah let her hug him. He did not hug back. His arms stayed at his sides and his face turned slightly away, pressed against her shoulder like he was waiting for the moment to be over. Ava accepted the embrace with her chin up and her hands still. Evelyn pulled back and looked at them both, touching their cheeks, making small sounds of relief. Tears moved down her face at a very appropriate pace. "I have been out of my mind," she said. "I have been driving around looking for you. I tried to call and the line was dead and I thought the worst." She pressed a hand over her heart. "I thought the absolute worst." A woman appeared in the doorway behind her. Then a second. Both wore similar cardigans. Both held their purses close to their bodies the way people do in hospitals, and both were watching Evelyn with the soft, supportive expressions of people who had known her for a long time and trusted everything they knew. "She called us from the parking lot," one of them said to nobody in particular. "She was barely able to speak." "This woman has given more to our community than anyone I know," the other said. She was looking at Marcus when she said it. Marcus did not respond. He watched Evelyn. Evelyn straightened and turned to face the room. She had gathered herself now. Her voice was steady, and her expression was the portrait of a woman wronged by circumstance, but too gracious to complain about it. "I want to explain," she said, "because I know how this looks." She described a threat. Unnamed men connected to Rachel's worst period, people from that world, who had come looking for her at the house. She said she had been terrified for the children's safety. She said the chain on the door was her way of keeping them protected while she arranged for them to be moved somewhere safer. She said she checked on them every single day and left food on the porch, and that if the food was not there when people arrived, well, she paused thoughtfully. "Ava is very particular about where things go," she said. "She may have moved things around, or not been eating properly, which is something we have discussed before." She said it gently, with a small, regretful smile that suggested she had worried about Ava's habits for a long time. One of the women in the doorway nodded along. Detective Laura Bennett had been standing quietly near the wall for the past several minutes, a small notebook open in her hand, watching all of it. She was a measured woman, not much older than Rachel, with the kind of face that gave away very little while missing absolutely nothing. Evelyn had not looked at her yet. She was looking at Marcus. "I don't believe we've met," Evelyn said pleasantly. "Marcus Hale. And you found the children." She folded her hands together. "That must have been alarming. What exactly did they say to you before the police came?" She had not asked how Noah was doing. She had not asked whether Ava had eaten. She had not asked if either child had been frightened. Marcus kept his face even. Then Evelyn turned back to Noah and reached out to brush the hair from his forehead. Noah's whole body went stiff, a small involuntary motion, like a reflex he could not stop. He caught himself a half-second later and relaxed his shoulders, staring down at the coloring book. Evelyn did not seem to notice. Ava noticed, and she did what she had probably done many times before, without thinking about it. "Sorry," she said quietly, to no one in particular, and to everyone in the room. "Sorry for all the trouble." Marcus looked at her. She was staring at her hands. Detective Bennett stepped forward. "Mrs. Mercer," she said, "I'll need the key to the padlock." Evelyn turned with an expression of polite cooperation. "Of course. She checked one pocket, then the other, then opened her small handbag and moved things around with a slight frown. "I must have left it somewhere. I'm so sorry. Everything has been such chaos today." Bennett wrote something in her notebook. 2 officers appeared in the doorway. Evelyn accepted this with dignified resignation, smoothing the front of her cardigan and gathering her purse. She kissed 2 fingers and pressed them briefly to Ava's hair. Then she leaned down close and spoke near the girl's ear. Quiet enough that it was meant to feel private, loud enough that Marcus could hear every word. "That man in the vest," Evelyn said softly. "Be very careful, sweetheart. He may be exactly the kind of person I was trying to protect you from." She straightened and walked out between the officers without looking back. The room was quiet. Ava lifted her eyes slowly. She found Marcus across the small room, the way she had found him in the waiting area earlier, like she had already learned where to look. But this time her expression was different. The small, careful trust that had built itself over soup and engine stories, and a man who had not left. It was still there, just cracked down the middle, like something fragile that had been knocked and had not yet decided whether it would hold. The hospital quieted down the way hospitals do late at night. The sharp, busy sounds of the day softened into low footsteps and distant monitors, and the occasional creak of a cart moving down a hallway. Marcus sat in a plastic chair outside Noah's room. Bear had gone to get coffee. The children were finally asleep. Down the hall, in a small family consultation room with a window that looked out onto a dark parking lot, Detective Bennett was interviewing Evelyn Mercer. Marcus could not hear the conversation. He did not need to. He already knew what Evelyn was doing in there. Denise Carter arrived at the hospital just before 10 o'clock. She had changed out of the blouse she had been wearing earlier and put on a plain gray sweater, and she looked like a woman who had spent the past several hours sitting at her kitchen table arguing with herself. An officer led her to a side room. Marcus passed her in the hallway. She stopped. "I should have said something," Denise said. "A long time ago." Marcus looked at her, not with judgment, just with patience. "You're saying it now," he said. She pressed her lips together and nodded once and followed the officer inside. Her statement took about 40 minutes. Bennett came out of Evelyn's interview first. She walked to a small table near the nurses' station, where a younger officer had been organizing items removed from the house. evidence bags, a clipboard, a cardboard box that smelled faintly of mold. Marcus watched her go through it without trying to get closer. Bear appeared beside him with 2 cups of coffee and handed one over without a word. After a moment, Bennett pulled something from the cardboard box, a small paper rectangle inside a clear evidence bag, a store receipt. She looked at it for a long time. Then she found the officer who had cataloged the box and said something quiet. The officer checked his clipboard and nodded. Bennett walked over to Marcus. "The receipt," she said, "is from a grocery store about 2 miles from the house, dated 4 days ago." She kept her voice low and factual. "Fresh produce, salmon, a scented candle, cleaning supplies, vitamins." She paused. "Paid for using a benefits card registered to Ava and Noah Mercer." Marcus held his coffee cup with both hands and said nothing. "None of those items were in the house," Bennett said. Bear exhaled slowly through his nose. Denise came out of the interview room a few minutes later. Her eyes were red. She found Marcus in the hallway and spoke without being asked. "She told me the children had moved to another state," Denise said, "with Rachel. She said Rachel had gotten herself together enough to take them back." She paused. "She said it like it was good news. I believed her because I wanted to believe her, because the alternative was." She stopped. "Too hard to think about," Marcus said. "Yes." Denise steadied herself. "She told the children's school something different. Something about a family medical situation and a change in enrollment plans. I found that out tonight from my neighbor whose daughter is in Ava's class." Denise shook her head slowly. "She told her church that the children were living with relatives temporarily while Rachel completed a program. She told her brother that Rachel had taken the children without permission." She pressed a hand against the side of her neck. Every story was different, but every story kept people from looking. Ava was not quite asleep. Marcus could see her through the small window in the door. She was lying still, eyes open, watching the ceiling. He pushed the door gently and stepped inside. She did not look at him right away. When she did, her voice was very small. "I got her in trouble," Ava said. "Grandma Evelyn, by putting the sign in the window." Marcus pulled the chair close to the edge of her bed and sat down. "The sign in the window showed people what was already there," he said. "You did not put the chain on that door. You did not buy groceries with your food money and bring them somewhere else." He kept his voice quiet and steady. "Speaking the truth does not create the wrongdoing, Ava. It just means the wrongdoing can finally be seen." She was quiet for a moment, thinking it through the way she thought through everything. Carefully. All the way to the end. "Okay," she said softly. She turned onto her side and closed her eyes. At 5:30 in the morning, when the sky outside was the dark gray color it turns just before it decides to go pink, Detective Bennett sat at a workstation down the hall with a financial record on the screen in front of her. Monthly deposits, regular as clockwork. Survivor benefits and insurance payments issued in the names of Ava Rose Mercer and Noah James Mercer. Every one of them had landed in an account belonging to Evelyn. Bennett leaned back in her chair and looked at the ceiling for a moment. Then she reached for her phone. By 6 o'clock, 4 warrants had been signed and issued. Evelyn Mercer's home. Her vehicle. Her financial accounts going back 3 years. And the storage room she maintained at the church 2 blocks from her house. Sunday morning arrived quietly. The sky turned pink, then pale gold, then the flat white color of a day that had not decided what it wanted to be yet. The hospital hummed with the shift change. New nurses, fresh coffee smell from somewhere down the hall, the sound of a cart with a squeaky wheel making its rounds. Marcus had not slept. He sat in the same plastic chair with his leather vest draped over one knee and his coffee cup long empty. Bear had gone home around 3 to feed his dog and promised to be back by 9. Marcus did not mind the quiet. The quiet meant the children were still resting. He had spent the early hours watching the pale strip of light under Noah's door and thinking about warrants. 40 miles away, a search team arrived at Evelyn Mercer's property just after 7. Marcus heard about it in pieces. Bennett called twice from the scene, keeping him updated in the careful way she had of sharing information without sharing more than she intended. The first call came at 7:40. "Bank statements going back 38 months, Bennett said. She was receiving 2 separate payments, survivor benefits through the federal program and a private insurance disbursement from the policy the children's father held." A pause. "Both issued in the children's names. Both deposited into her personal account." Marcus pressed the phone flat against his ear. "Where did the money go?" he asked. A credit card with a balance she had been carrying since her husband died. A car payment. Utility bills. Bennett's voice stayed level. 3 donations to her church. 1 large enough to get her name on a plaque in the fellowship hall. Marcus looked at the ceiling. She had used money that belonged to 2 hungry children to make herself look generous in front of her neighbors. He did not say anything. There was nothing useful to say. The second call came just before 9. Officers had found the padlock key on a hook inside Evelyn's kitchen cabinet, 3rd shelf, behind a row of spice jars. Beside it were 2 duplicate house keys on a plain metal ring. In the refrigerator, they found fresh salmon wrapped in white paper, a bag of baby spinach, a container of expensive yogurt, and a scented candle sitting on the counter still in its bag. The same items from the grocery receipt. Every one of them purchased 4 days ago with the benefits card registered to Ava and Noah. The food was for Evelyn's house, not theirs. In the downstairs office, inside a locked file drawer, investigators found a manila folder. Inside were 2 documents printed on plain paper and signed by Evelyn. Each one stated that the children were residing in the care of their mother, Rachel Mercer, at a listed address in another state. Both documents were dated months apart. Both were false. She had built herself a paper trail. In case anyone ever asked, she had an answer ready. Bennett came to the hospital at 10:30. She spoke with Evelyn privately first, in the same family consultation room as the night before. Marcus stood in the hallway and watched a nurse help Noah eat a small bowl of oatmeal through the window in the door. Noah held the spoon very carefully, like he was not completely sure it would keep being offered. The conversation between Bennett and Evelyn lasted 20 minutes. When Bennett came out, she found Marcus and spoke clearly. "She admits placing the chain on the door," Bennett said. Marcus kept his face still. "Her explanation is that she was protecting the children. She claims Rachel caused the accident that killed their father. That Rachel developed a serious dependency before the crash, not after. That she had endangered the family more than once. And that locking the children inside was the only way Evelyn could keep them safe while she arranged a permanent solution." "What kind of permanent solution?" Marcus asked. She did not specify. Bennett folded her arms. "Rachel's current location and condition are unverified. Until we can confirm her situation, child welfare cannot move forward with any family placement." Marcus understood what that meant before she finished the sentence. A social worker named Patricia spoke to Ava and Noah together in Noah's room, mid-afternoon. Marcus waited in the hall. He had asked to be close. Patricia had allowed it. He could not hear the exact words, but he heard the moment it landed. There was a long silence. Then he heard Ava's voice, very tight and very controlled, asking one question. And then nothing for a while. When Patricia came out, she looked tired in the way people look when they have had to say a true and terrible thing to a child. "They know," she said. Marcus nodded. "Ava asked if Grandma Evelyn would go to jail," Patricia said. "Noah asked if she was still allowed to call her grandma." Marcus pressed his back against the wall and let out a slow breath. "What did you tell them?" he asked. "That those were both very good questions," Patricia said quietly, "and that some answers take a little longer to find." By Sunday evening, the paperwork was complete. Ava and Noah Mercer were placed together in the temporary care of Helen and George Walsh, a licensed foster family in a neighborhood about 12 minutes from the hospital. Patricia walked the children out through a side entrance. Noah was wearing the oversized hospital socks, with the rubber grip dots on the bottom. He was carrying his drawings in a folder a nurse had given him. Ava held his hand and did not look back. Marcus followed them out. He did not follow close enough to interfere. He just wanted to know where they were going. He pulled on his helmet and started the engine and kept a quiet distance as the social worker's car moved through the Sunday evening streets. The sun was low and orange, and the shadows were long. The car turned once, then again, then pulled up in front of a pale green house with a porch light already on. Marcus stopped his bike at the corner. He watched Patricia walk the children up the front steps. He watched the door open. He watched Ava and Noah step inside. The door closed gently behind them. Marcus sat on his bike at the corner for a moment. The engine was still running. The street was quiet. He had gotten them out of the house. He had stayed through the night. He had watched the truth begin to surface one piece at a time. But Ava and Noah did not have their mother. They did not have an answer about who she really was or what had really happened. They had a folder of drawings, a pair of grip sock feet, and a door they had just walked through for the first time. The rescue was not finished, not even close. He put the bike in gear and headed home. The pale green house smelled like laundry soap and something warm baking in the oven. Helen Walsh opened the door wide and stepped back to give them room. She was a round-faced woman with soft gray streaks in her brown hair, and the kind of eyes that looked like they had seen a lot of hard things without becoming hard themselves. She did not rush toward the children. She did not crouch down and speak in a high, sweet voice, the way some adults did when they were trying too hard. She simply said, "Come on in, you must be hungry." Noah looked at Ava. Ava looked at the floor. Then they both stepped inside. Bear had dropped 2 small bags at the hospital earlier that afternoon, packed with things the club had gathered quickly. A change of clothes for each of them, a toothbrush, a bar of soap still in the wrapper, a small stuffed bear tucked in beside Noah's things, which nobody claimed to have put there. Helen carried the bags herself without being asked. George Walsh appeared from the kitchen, a dish towel over one shoulder. He nodded at the children the same way a man might nod at a neighbor, calm and easy, like their arrival required nothing unusual from anyone. He went back to the kitchen without a word. Helen walked them down a short hallway and opened a door. The room had 2 beds with matching blue covers, a window with white curtains, a small lamp between the beds that gave off a soft yellow glow. The door had a regular handle and no lock. "This is yours for as long as you need it," Helen said. "And this door does not lock, not ever. You can leave it open or pull it shut, whichever helps you sleep. But it will never be locked from the outside." Noah stared at the door handle for a long moment. Then he walked to the nearest bed and sat down slowly on the edge, like he was testing whether it would hold him. Ava stood near the entrance with her bag still on her shoulder. She looked at the dresser, the curtains, the lamp. Her face did not change. She did not unpack. She left her bag on the floor beside the bed and sat down on top of the covers with her shoes still on. If they were going to move her again, she was going to be ready. Marcus stayed in the Walsh's living room until the placement paperwork was finished, and Patricia had gone over everything with Helen. The house was quiet around him. A clock on the wall marked each second. George brought him a cup of coffee without being asked, set it on the side table, and went back to doing whatever George Walsh did in the evenings. When Helen came out to let him know the paperwork was signed, Marcus stood. "I'll come by tomorrow," he told her. "They'd like that," she said. He stopped in the hallway before he left. Ava was standing at the bedroom doorway. Noah was tucked into the bed behind her, awake, watching. "You said we wouldn't be abandoned," Ava said. Her voice was flat and very controlled, but her hands were tight at her sides. "I know what it feels like," Marcus said. He did not argue with her. He did not say she had it wrong. "This is not me leaving. The investigators are still working. I am still working. Nobody is done until you are somewhere safe for good." Ava looked at him for a long moment. She did not say she believed him, but she did not look away either. Noah slid off the bed. He walked to Marcus and held out a folded piece of paper. Marcus opened it carefully. It was a drawing in pencil. A woman standing outside a house in heavy rain. Her arms were slightly raised, like she was trying to be seen from the window. The rain was drawn in long, careful lines running top to bottom across the whole page. "That's my mom," Noah said. "She came to the house after my last birthday." He pressed his lips together. "Grandma said it was a dream, but I saw her." Marcus folded the drawing gently and tucked it inside his vest, close. "I believe you," he said. He pulled on his jacket, walked down the porch steps, and started his engine. The street was dark and still. It was not long before midnight. He rode away with the drawing against his chest, and Rachel Mercer's name already forming a plan in the back of his mind. Monday came in gray and cool. Marcus pulled up to Denise Carter's driveway just after 7 in the morning. The neighborhood was quiet, except for a sprinkler ticking somewhere down the block, and the sound of a garbage truck working its way up the next street over. Denise was already on her porch with a mug of coffee. She watched him park the motorcycle and pull off his helmet without saying anything. Her expression was cautious but not unfriendly. Yesterday had changed something between them. Not much, but enough. "Morning," Marcus said. "Morning," she said back. "You want coffee?" "No, thank you." He climbed the porch steps and reached into the inside pocket of his vest. He unfolded Noah's drawing carefully and held it out so she could see it clearly. Denise set her mug down on the railing and took it with both hands. She looked at it for a long time. The rain drawn in long, careful lines. The woman with her arms slightly raised, the window of the house above her. "This is Rachel," Marcus said. "Noah drew it. He says she came to the house sometime after his last birthday. July, near as we can figure." Denise said nothing right away. Her thumb moved slightly along the edge of the paper, a small, nervous gesture. "I remember that night," she finally said. She handed the drawing back and picked up her coffee mug again, but she did not drink from it. "It was raining hard. Late evening, maybe 8 or 8:30. I was in my front room watching television." She paused. "I saw a woman on the Mercer porch. Thin, real thin. She was soaked through her jacket. She knocked on the door several times." Denise pressed her lips together. "Evelyn opened it Only part way. They spoke for a minute or two. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see the woman's face. She stopped again. She was crying, reaching toward the door like she was asking to come inside. Marcus waited. Evelyn shut the door, Denise said. The woman stood there on that porch for a while in the rain. Then she walked away. Did you go out to her? Denise looked down at her mug. No, she said quietly. Evelyn came over about an hour later, said the woman was a relative of Rachel's, said she had a problem with pills and had been showing up trying to get money from the family, said she had asked her to leave and that was the end of it. Denise's voice dropped. I believed her. I told myself it wasn't my business. Marcus did not tell her that was the wrong call. She already knew it. He could see it in the way she held herself, a little pulled inward, like she had been carrying that night around in her chest for months. Was there anything else? He asked. Anything after that? Denise thought for a moment. Then she straightened slightly. The mailbox, she said. A few times that summer, maybe 3 or 4 times. I saw a car slow down in front of the house. Woman inside. She would get out and put something in the box and then leave quickly. She looked at Marcus directly now. Evelyn would come out almost right after, like she was watching for it. She'd take whatever was in the box and carry it inside. Marcus was quiet for a moment. The garbage truck turned the corner at the far end of the block. She never left it for the kids, he said. Never, Denise said. By mid-morning, Marcus had passed what Denise told him to Detective Bennett. By noon, her team had pulled the phone records for the Mercer landline and Ava's old tablet. The results were plain and hard to argue with. 14 calls from a number registered to a non-profit recovery residence several hours north of the city. All of them blocked. All of them logged between March and August. No court order existed to justify blocking a single one. By early afternoon, the name of the recovery residence had a confirmed address. Marcus called Bear. Find Rachel Mercer, he said. We leave tonight. They left at 7 that evening. The sky was still pale at the edges when Marcus and Bear rolled out of the neighborhood and pointed their bikes north. The highway opened up wide and flat ahead of them, and the wind came in cool and steady. Marcus kept his speed even. He did not push it. Somewhere around the first hour, he pulled off at a gas station outside a small town. Bear topped off his tank while Marcus stood beside a payphone near the edge of the lot and dialed the Walsh house. Helen picked up on the second ring. This is Marcus, he said. I just wanted the kids to know I'm still moving. There was a brief pause on the line. He could hear a television somewhere in the background. Then Helen said, Hold on just a moment. A few seconds passed. Marcus? It was Ava. Her voice was small and careful. Hey, he said. I'm on the road, heading north. Okay, she said. He could tell she was standing very still while she listened. He had learned that about her already. When she was unsure of something, she went completely quiet, like she was trying not to use up the air in the room. I'm not going to tell you anything until I know something for certain, he said. But I wanted you to hear my voice so you'd know I'm still out here. Another pause. Okay, she said again. This time it sounded slightly different, a little less tight. You sleeping all right? Sort of. Noah? He's okay. He ate most of his dinner. Good, Marcus said. You did good today, Ava. She didn't answer that, but she didn't hang up either. Go get some rest, he said. I'll call when I know something real. He hung up and walked back to his bike. Bear handed him a paper cup of gas station coffee without being asked. They reached the town just before midnight. It was a quiet place, the kind that rolled up its sidewalks early. A motel sat at the edge of the main road with a blinking vacancy sign and a parking lot full of long-haul trucks. Marcus paid cash for 2 rooms and slept with his boots near the door. At sunrise, he called Detective Bennett. She had already been in contact with the facility. She told him the director was expecting them. They rode the last 12 miles in the early morning light. The recovery residence sat on a low hill off a county road, a plain brick building surrounded by a modest garden and a gravel parking lot. A woman in her 50s met them at the front entrance. She was sturdy and calm, the kind of person who had clearly seen hard things and decided not to be broken by them. "Mr. Hale," she said, shaking his hand firmly. "I'm Director Paulson. Detective Bennett explained why you're here." She led them inside and down a hallway that smelled like coffee and floor cleaner. "Rachel has been with us for 9 months, Director Paulson said as they walked. "She completed our core program in the spring. She's been working in our kitchen since April. Full shifts, never missed one." She paused outside a door at the end of the hall. "She's tried to reach her children repeatedly. Calls, letters. We helped her send several of them ourselves." She looked at Marcus directly. She believed her mother was the only thing standing between her and her children. She accepted that because she blamed herself. Then Director Paulson opened the door. Rachel Mercer was standing at a small table near the window. She was thin, with dark circles under her eyes that no amount of sleep had fully erased. But she was steady on her feet. She looked at Marcus and then at Bear, and then back at Marcus, and something in her face braced itself. "Are they all right?" she asked immediately. "Ava and Noah." "They're safe," Marcus said. "They're being looked after." He pulled out a chair. "You need to sit down," he said. "I have to tell you something, and you're going to want to be sitting." She sat. Marcus told her. He kept his voice level and plain, and he did not soften the details because she deserved to know all of it. He told her about the chain on the front door, about the covered windows and the disconnected phones and the food that barely existed. He told her about Noah's drawing and the empty jar of peanut butter and the hospital and the weeks they had spent locked inside that house. Rachel's face changed in stages. First confusion, then a slow and terrible understanding. Her hands gripped the edge of the table. Then she made a sound low in her throat, and Bear quietly stepped forward and put a steady hand on her shoulder so she would not slide out of the chair entirely. "My mother did this," she said. It was not really a question. "Yes," Marcus said. She pressed both hands over her mouth. Her whole body shook once, hard, like something had gone through her. For a long moment nobody spoke. Then Rachel straightened slowly. She wiped her face with the back of her hand and took a breath that was jagged at first, and then steadier. She looked at Marcus with red eyes. "I was in an accident," she said. Her voice was rough but even. 3 years ago, a driver ran a red light and hit us. My husband died. I broke my back in 2 places. She paused. "They gave me something for the pain, and I needed it at first. I really did. But then I kept needing it when I shouldn't have anymore." She looked down at her hands. "I went into treatment voluntarily. I signed myself in. I did not want my children to watch me disappear." She lifted her eyes again. "I was not a danger to them. I was ashamed. There is a difference." Marcus nodded once. Rachel stood and moved to the small dresser against the wall. She opened the bottom drawer and lifted out a worn folder thick with paper. She laid it on the table in front of Marcus. Inside was a stack of letters, envelopes with stamps, call logs printed on facility stationery, each blocked number highlighted, birthday cards that had never been opened, and beneath all of that, a small bundle of letters tied with a rubber band. Rachel placed the bundle down last. "These came back," she said. Her voice broke slightly on the words. Addressed in Ava's handwriting, telling me the children were fine, that they didn't want me to call anymore. She touched the edge of the bundle without picking it up. That they had stopped thinking about me. Marcus reached across the table and picked up the small bundle. He untied the rubber band slowly and spread the letters out. There were 7 of them, each one written on plain white paper in careful, neat handwriting. He read the first line of the top letter quietly to himself. Then he set it down. He pulled out his phone and opened the photo he had taken of Ava's sign from the window, the one she had pressed against the glass. "Please don't leave." He held the phone beside the letter. The handwriting was not the same. Ava's letters on the sign were uneven, a little hurried, the way a child writes when she is scared and moving fast. The A in please leaned slightly left. The L was tall and looping. The letters in this response were careful, almost controlled, the kind of careful that comes from someone trying to copy something they have studied but cannot feel. He passed the phone to Bear without a word. Bear looked at it, then at the letter, then set both down on the table quietly. "Rachel," Marcus said, "did these come directly to you here at the facility?" "Through my mother," she said. "Evelyn told me she was acting as a go-between. She said the children were too upset to have direct contact, that a counselor had recommended it." Rachel's jaw tightened. I believed her. I was still in the early part of the program. I was not thinking clearly about everything yet. I wanted any word from them at all. Marcus nodded slowly. "Did you ever visit the house?" Rachel was quiet for a moment. "Once," she said, "after Noah's birthday. I drove down. I had saved enough from kitchen shifts to rent a car for the day." She folded her hands together on the table. "Evelyn met me on the porch. She told me there was a temporary custody arrangement in place, that I had violated it by showing up without going through proper channels." She paused. She said if she reported it to Child Services, it could affect my chances of getting the children back permanently. Her voice stayed steady, but just barely. She told me they were staying with a cousin for the week, that they weren't even home. She looked down at her folded hands. "I drove back," she said quietly. "I told myself I was protecting them by not making it worse." The room was still. Bear shifted his weight but said nothing. "You were early in recovery," Marcus said. "You were afraid. That makes sense." He let that sit for a second. "And it was also a mistake not to push harder." Rachel looked up at him quickly. Her eyes were raw. "I know that," she said. "I'm not saying it to hurt you," Marcus said. "I'm saying it because there's going to be a room someday soon where people ask you about that visit. And the answer you just gave me is the right one, all of it, the fear and the mistake together." He held her gaze. "You don't get to let shame swallow the whole story. Not now. Those kids need you thinking clearly." Rachel pressed her lips together and nodded once. A laptop on the corner of the desk chimed. Director Paulson stepped in and opened it without ceremony. Detective Bennett's face filled the screen, her expression composed and attentive. "Mrs. Mercer," Bennett said, "I want to thank you for agreeing to this. I need you to preserve everything you have shown Mr. Hale today. Every letter, every envelope, every call log. Do not send originals anywhere without speaking to me first. We will arrange for proper collection." She glanced toward Marcus briefly. "Mr. Hale, I'll need copies before you leave." "Already planning on it," Marcus said. They made copies at the facility's front desk. Director Paulson helped Rachel organize everything into a labeled envelope, while Bear waited near the door with the originals secured in a canvas bag. They ate lunch in a small room off the main hallway. Soup and bread. Simple and quiet. Rachel sat with them, but did not eat much. She kept her hands around her coffee cup like she was trying to warm something that had been cold for a long time. At 1:30 they walked out to the gravel lot. Rachel stood at the entrance and watched them wheel the bikes toward the road. "Tell them," she said. Her voice was low. "Whatever you think is right. I trust you." Marcus looked back at her once, then he nodded. They rode south. The highway stretched out flat and open the same as it had coming up, but the light was different now. Afternoon light, longer shadows. About 40 miles out, Marcus pulled off at a wide gravel shoulder and let the engine idle down. Bear slowed beside him and waited without asking questions. Marcus dialed the Walsh house. Helen answered. He asked for Ava. He heard footsteps. Then the soft sound of the phone being picked up carefully. "Marcus?" Ava said. "Yeah," he said. "It's me. I found her." Silence. "Your mom is alive," he said. "She's safe. She's been in a program getting better, and she has been trying to reach you and Noah the whole time." He kept his voice even and plain. She never stopped. He waited. Ava did not say anything, but after a moment he heard it. Just barely. A small, broken sound. The kind that comes out when something you have been holding so tightly finally lets go. He stayed on the line and said nothing. He just held the phone and listened to her cry. They pulled into the city just after 6 on Tuesday evening. The sky was a deep orange behind the rooftops. Long shadows crossed the road in thin stripes. Marcus parked outside the precinct and carried the canvas bag inside himself. Bear waited with the bikes. Detective Bennett met him in the hallway. She took the bag without ceremony and checked the contents against the list Marcus had photographed on his phone. "Rachel Mercer's full statement is coming Wednesday morning," Marcus said. "Her counselor is driving her down?" Bennett nodded. "I'll be here early." "There's a detail in the letters you need to look at before then." Marcus pulled out a folded copy he had kept separately. He pointed to the handwriting on the supposed reply from Ava. "Compare that to what the child actually writes." Bennett studied both for a long moment. "I'll have someone look at it tonight," she said. Marcus held her gaze. "Tonight, not tomorrow." Bennett met his eyes without flinching. "Tonight," she agreed. He and Bear drove to the Walsh house just before 7. Helen opened the door and kept her voice quiet. "Noah's been asking about you all afternoon," she said. "Ava's been quiet. Real quiet." George had the kitchen light on and was washing dishes slowly. He gave Marcus a small nod from across the room. Noah came down the stairs at a run. He stopped 2 steps from the bottom and looked up at Marcus with wide eyes. "Did you see her?" he asked. "I did," Marcus said. He crouched down so he was eye level with the boy. "She's okay. She's working hard and she's getting stronger every day." Noah chewed his lip. "Does she remember the bedtime song?" Marcus looked at him steadily. "Which one?" Noah hummed a few careful notes, soft and a little uncertain. Marcus did not recognize the melody, but he memorized it right then, every rise and fall of it. "I don't know the answer to that yet," Marcus said, "but I'm going to find out, and I'll tell you the truth when I do, okay?" Noah nodded slowly and pressed his mouth together to keep it steady. Ava was sitting on the couch. Her knees were pulled up. She had a book open in her lap, but she was not reading it. Marcus sat in the chair across from her and waited. She did not look up. "I'm not going to push you," he said. "You don't have to feel anything tonight." "I know," she said flatly. A few seconds passed. "What if it gets taken away again?" she said. It was not quite a question. I can't promise you nothing will be hard from here, Marcus said. I've never promised you that. She pulled the book slightly closer to her chest. What I can tell you, he said, is that what I found yesterday is real, and it matters, and people are working tonight to make sure it counts for something. Ava did not answer. But she did not push back either. That was enough for now. Rachel arrived Wednesday morning at 8:45 with her counselor, a steady-voiced woman named Patricia, who carried a folder and spoke in calm, measured sentences. Detective Bennett sat across from Rachel for nearly 2 hours. Marcus waited outside in the hallway with Bear. Neither of them needed to be in the room. Rachel knew her own story. When it was done, Bennett walked out with her notepad and 2 additional officers behind her. We're going to her church, Bennett said simply. The church was a neat brick building on a quiet street. Evelyn volunteered there twice a week and had a storage room she used for what the congregation understood to be charity supplies. The storage room smelled like cardboard and old candle wax. Metal shelves lined both walls, and behind a stack of folded tablecloths, officers found a locked cabinet. Inside the cabinet was a sealed cardboard box. Inside the box was everything. Rachel's letters. Dozens of them. Still in their envelopes, unopened. Birthday cards with the seals unbroken. Photographs Rachel had sent of herself smiling in the recovery garden, holding up a drawing Noah had mailed before the contact was cut off. Pressed flowers from what looked like a windowsill arrangement. And drawings. Small crayon drawings on notebook paper, folded carefully, never opened. Beside the box were loose practice sheets. Pages and pages of them. On every single one, in slightly unsteady practice strokes, was Ava's handwriting. The same uneven letters, the same tall looping L, the same leftward lean on the capital A. Evelyn had studied it. She had practiced it. Over and over until she could copy it well enough to fool a mother who desperately wanted to believe her daughter was writing back. And clipped to the inside of the box lid was a printed audio transcript with a small recorder tucked beside it. Bennett pressed play. Evelyn's voice came through clearly. Calm. Reassuring. Every word placed with care. I will make sure they receive every letter, Rachel. You have my word. I'll arrange the calls for the first week of the month. The children need consistency right now, and I'm going to give them that. The room was silent after it stopped. A therapist named Dr. Osi came to the Walsh house that afternoon. She sat with Ava and Noah in the living room. Helen stayed nearby but gave them space. Marcus waited in the kitchen with George. Dr. Osi showed the children selected pieces. Not everything. Only what was appropriate, and only what was true. Noah saw a photograph of Rachel standing in the recovery garden holding one of his drawings up beside her face. He recognized the drawing immediately. He had made it the week before Evelyn cut the contact. A blue bird on a telephone wire. He pressed his finger gently against the photograph and did not say anything for a long time. Ava held a birthday card. It was for her 9th birthday. The envelope was still sealed when police found it. Dr. Osei had opened it carefully in front of them. Inside was a pressed flower. Yellow. Dry now, but still whole. And beneath it, in Rachel's handwriting, were 2 sentences. I am getting better every single day so I can come back and be the mother you deserve. I love you more than you know, and I am never going to stop. Ava read it once, then she read it again. Her eyes moved over the words, slowly, the way you move over something you want to make sure is real. Her jaw was tight. Her hands were completely still. Then, very quietly, she let out a breath. It was long and slow, like she had been holding it since the night she pressed her sign against the window. She did not cry. She just sat there with the card in both hands and looked at those 2 sentences for a long time. And for the first time since Marcus had found her, she looked like a child who was beginning to believe that the worst part might actually be behind her. The rest of Wednesday was quiet. Helen made chicken soup for supper. George set the table without asking anyone to help, but Noah pulled out his own chair and then Ava's, the way he always did. Helen noticed. She did not make a big deal of it. After supper, Noah drew at the kitchen table while Ava read on the couch. The house was warm and smelled like broth and dish soap. Outside, the streetlights came on one by one. It looked, Marcus thought, like a normal evening. He stayed until 8, then said goodnight the same way he had the nights before. At the door, clearly, with a time. "I'll be here tomorrow around 4, he said. Noah waved from the table without looking up from his drawing. Ava looked up from her book. She did not wave, but she held his gaze for a moment before she looked back down. That was its own kind of answer. Thursday and Friday moved in steady rhythms. Dr. Osi came both mornings. She sat with the children for an hour each time, gentle and unhurried. She did not flood them with information. She gave them one true thing at a time and let it settle before offering another. She told them that their mother had been to see a doctor every week for months, that she had a job she showed up to every single day, that she had asked about them in every session since the very first one. Noah listened with both hands flat on the table, very still. Ava listened with her arms crossed, but her shoulders dropped a little more each time. Marcus came at 4 on Thursday and 4 on Friday. He brought nothing. He did not perform cheerfulness or push conversation. He sat with them. He answered questions when they had them. When they did not, he was simply there. On Friday afternoon, Noah showed him a new drawing. A woman standing in a garden, holding something up beside her face. Marcus recognized the pose immediately. It was the photograph. Noah had drawn it from memory. "That's her," Noah said. "Yeah," Marcus said. "That's her." Rachel spent those same days meeting with people and signing her name and answering questions she had already answered before, and she did it without complaint. A social worker named Gail came twice. A family services coordinator reviewed the supervised contact agreement with her line by line. A doctor confirmed her medication records and her clean screenings. She agreed to every condition, every single one. Patricia drove her to each appointment and waited in the car. Rachel told Marcus later that she had not felt nervous during any of it. She had felt ready. There was a difference, she said, and she had learned to recognize it. Saturday morning was overcast. Helen made pancakes and let Noah pour his own syrup. Ava helped set out the plates without being asked. George refilled the orange juice and told a slow, meandering story about a raccoon that had once gotten into his garage, which made Noah laugh so hard he had to put down his fork. After breakfast, Helen explained the afternoon clearly and without drama. A room at the family services building. A therapist present the whole time. 1 hour. Then they would come home, have supper, and watch a movie if they wanted. Noah nodded immediately. Ava was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Will Marcus be there?" "He'll be in the building," Helen said. "Right outside the room." Ava looked down at her plate. "Okay," she said. The family services room had soft chairs and a low table. A window with frosted glass let in pale light. A box of tissues sat on the corner of the table, placed there without comment. The door opened. Rachel stepped in. She was wearing a plain blue sweater, and her hair was pulled back simply. She looked smaller than Marcus had expected, standing there in the doorway. Her hands were folded in front of her, and she was very still. Noah looked at her for 1 second. Then he crossed the room at a dead run and crashed into her arms. Rachel caught him and held on. She pressed her face into his hair and closed her eyes. She did not speak. She just held him. Noah made a sound that was not quite a word, more like a long breath that had been waiting months to come out. Ava had not moved. She stood close to Marcus near the door, her arms at her sides. Her face was unreadable, but she was watching. Rachel looked up from Noah's shoulder. She met Ava's eyes. She did not reach out. She did not take a single step forward. She lowered herself slowly to her knees, right where she was, with Noah still tucked against her side. "I got sick," she said. Her voice was steady. "After the accident, I got sick in a way I didn't know how to fix by myself, and I went somewhere to get help." She paused. "But I did not fight hard enough to get to you. And I'm sorry. I am so sorry for every day you spent thinking I didn't want you." Ava's jaw was tight. "None of what happened," Rachel said, "was your fault. Not one single part of it. Not yours and not Noah's." The room was completely quiet. Noah had his face pressed against Rachel's sleeve. His shoulders were shaking just slightly. Rachel kept her eyes on Ava. Patient, waiting. Then, softly, she began to hum. It was the same melody Noah had hummed on the stairs 3 days ago. The same rises and falls. The same quiet, careful notes. Noah went absolutely still. His head lifted slowly. Rachel sang it all the way through, low and steady, the way someone sings something they have sung 10,000 times. When the last note faded, Noah looked up at her with an expression that had no name for it. Wonder, maybe, or relief so deep it had nowhere else to go. Then Rachel folded her hands and said the words of an evening prayer. Simple words, the kind worn smooth from years of use, words that belonged to a father who was gone now, spoken in the voice of the mother who was here. Ava's arms dropped to her sides. She took one step forward, then another, and then she crossed the room and let Rachel pull her in, and Rachel held both of them together with her eyes closed and her head bowed, and she did not say another word. She did not need to. The hour passed the way good things do. Too quickly, but completely. When the therapist gave the gentle signal, Rachel did not pretend the time had not come. She pulled back and looked at both of them clearly. "I'm going to say goodbye now," she said, "and I'm going to tell you exactly when I'll see you next, because you deserve to know." She said the day. She said the time. "I'll be here," she said. "I promise." She kissed Noah's forehead. She looked at Ava for a long moment. Ava gave a small, tight nod. Rachel stood up. She smoothed her sweater. She walked to the door and turned once more, and she smiled at them. Then she stepped into the hallway. The door closed softly behind her, and neither child flinched. The next 2 weeks moved with purpose. Rachel came every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. She was always early. Not a few minutes early. Early enough to be sitting in the waiting area with her coat folded across her lap when Helen pulled up outside. Gail, the social worker, noted it each time. She did not say anything directly to Rachel about it, but Marcus noticed her writing it down. The visits followed a quiet rhythm. Rachel did not try to fill every minute with conversation or activity. She let the children lead. She asked what they wanted to do, and when Noah wanted to build something with the foam blocks in the corner, she sat on the floor with him and handed him pieces without comment. When Ava wanted to read side by side and not talk, Rachel picked up a book from the shelf and read. She learned how to be in the room with them. That was what she was doing, Marcus thought. Not performing, not trying to convince anyone of anything, just learning them again. One Wednesday, Rachel came in with 2 small plastic bins, flat lids, clear sides. She set them on the low table without explanation. Noah looked at them. Rachel knelt down and opened the first one. It had crackers in it, peanut butter packets, a few wrapped granola bars. "These are yours," she said. "You can put them wherever you want, in the room, in your bag, wherever feels right." Noah studied the bin for a long moment. He picked it up carefully, carried it to the corner beside the foam blocks, and set it on the floor next to his backpack. He looked at it. Then he nodded once, like he had made a private agreement with himself. Rachel watched him without saying a word. She blinked slowly. She handed Ava the second bin. Ava accepted it without comment. But she kept it on her side of the table for the rest of the visit, one hand resting lightly on the lid. On a Thursday evening, Marcus called the way he always did. Noah answered and talked for 11 minutes about a bird he had seen outside the classroom window during math. Then he passed the phone to Ava. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Can I ask you something?" "Yeah," Marcus said. "Why do you keep coming?" Her voice was even, careful. "We're not your family. You don't know us." Marcus did not answer right away. "You got a few minutes?" he said. "Yes," she said. He told her he would tell her in person. He said it was not the kind of thing that belonged on a phone call. Ava accepted that without pushing. She had learned that Marcus said what he meant, and if he said he would tell her something, he would. The following Monday, Marcus arrived at 4, as always. Noah was at the table with his drawings. Helen was folding laundry in the next room. Ava was on the couch, and she looked up the moment Marcus came through the door. She had not forgotten. They sat on the back porch while Noah worked inside. The afternoon was cool and gray, the kind of day that smelled like it might rain later. Marcus rested his forearms on his knees and looked at the yard. "I had a sister," he said. "Her name was Claire." Ava went still. "She was younger than me. When she was in trouble, she reached out, asked me for help." He paused. "I was young and I was scared, and I told myself I needed more time before I did anything. I kept waiting for the right moment." His voice stayed level, but something underneath it was heavy. "I waited too long." Ava did not move. "She went into foster care," Marcus said. "By the time I was old enough to go looking for her, she was gone. She died before I found her." He looked at the yard. "She never knew I spent years trying." The porch was very quiet. "I can't undo that," Marcus said. "Helping you and Noah doesn't fix what happened to Claire." He turned and looked at Ava directly. "But it means her memory does something. It means the next time a kid signals from a window, someone already knows how much it costs to look away." Ava stared at the yard for a long moment. Then she said quietly, "She would have been glad you stopped." Marcus did not answer right away. "Yeah," he said finally. "I hope so." Saturday's visit was different from the start. Gail had arranged to use one of the larger rooms at the Family Services building, a room with a small kitchen off to the side, a real stove, counter space, a table big enough for 3. Rachel had asked for this one. She brought ingredients in a cloth bag. Nothing complicated. Soup, the same way her husband had always made it on Sundays. Simple and warm, and enough for everyone. Noah stood on a step stool beside her at the counter and stirred when she told him to. He spilled a little broth, and Rachel handed him a towel without making a face. Ava sat at the table at first. Then she stood up and came to the counter on Rachel's other side. "What do I do?" she asked. Rachel handed her the bread to slice. They worked together without any big conversation. Noah narrated things occasionally. Rachel hummed once, quietly, without seeming to notice she was doing it. Ava concentrated on the bread with a focused expression, the same look she had when she was reading something hard. The soup came out well. They ate at the table together, all three of them, and the room smelled like something real and good and ordinary. Gail sat near the door with her notebook open. She wrote steadily for a while. Then she stopped writing and just watched them. After the visit, she found Marcus in the hallway. "I'm going to recommend moving to longer daytime contact," she said. "Full afternoons, possibly with a trial weekend before the month is out." Marcus nodded. Gail looked at him for a moment. "You've been good for them," she said. Then she walked away down the hall. Marcus stood there in the quiet corridor. He thought about Claire. He thought about a kitchen that smelled like soup, and a girl who had learned to slice bread, and a little boy on a step stool who spilled and did not get in trouble for it. He put his hands in his pockets and walked toward the exit. The first extended visit started at 10 in the morning. Rachel arrived at Helen and George's house with a canvas bag over one shoulder and a calm expression that Marcus suspected cost her something to hold. Gail was there for the first hour. After that, it was just Rachel and the children and the quiet rhythm of a Monday that had nowhere urgent to be. Noah claimed the kitchen table immediately. He spread his drawing supplies across half of it with the easy confidence of someone who knew the space. Rachel sat across from him. Ava settled beside her, close but not touching, and opened a book she had already read twice. Marcus sat in the living room with a cup of coffee Helen had handed him without asking. He could see the table from where he was. He did not try to insert himself. Rachel did not rush anything. She asked Noah what he was working on, and Noah explained it was a road. A long one, with hills on both sides and a sky full of birds. Rachel leaned over and pointed to one of the birds and asked if it was a specific kind. Noah corrected her with great seriousness. Rachel accepted the correction. Ava turned a page without looking up, but the corner of her mouth moved. It was quiet and ordinary and very good. An hour in, Noah was adding detail to the hills. Rachel was sketching something small on a scrap of paper, a simple shape Noah had requested without explanation. Ava had finally put her book down and was watching Rachel's hand move across the paper. Then Noah went still. Not the kind of still that meant he was concentrating. The other kind. The kind that Marcus had learned to watch for, a stillness that came from somewhere inside the memory rather than the room. "Grandma was yelling," Noah said. His voice was small, flat, like he was reading something off a wall far away. Rachel looked up slowly. She did not reach for him. She waited. "At Daddy," Noah said. "In the office. I was outside the door." He pressed his pencil lightly against the paper without drawing anything. "She said he needed to write her name on the papers. She said they were her grandchildren and she should be the one to have the money if something happened." He frowned. "Daddy said no. He said the money was for us, and Rachel was our mom, and that's how it was going to stay." The kitchen was very quiet. "Grandma said if Rachel ever got sick, or did something bad, then it should go to her." Noah looked at his drawing. Daddy still said no. Grandma said he was making a mistake. He paused. That was before the accident. Rachel's hand was flat on the table. She was very still. "Okay, buddy," she said gently. Her voice did not shake. "Thank you for telling me that." The therapist on record received the full account within the hour. By late afternoon, Detective Bennett had been notified. She moved quickly and without fanfare. The family attorney, a careful man named Gerald Price, who had handled the estate quietly for 2 years, received a formal request before the end of the business day. He produced the documents the following morning. The trust was real, and it was clear. Ava and Noah's father had established an educational fund. Rachel was named the primary guardian with full access. There was a single contingency line. If Rachel were ever legally declared permanently unfit, administration would transfer to Evelyn Mercer. That was the only path Evelyn had ever had to the money. The full accident report came next. Marcus read it in Bennett's office, standing at the corner of her desk while she walked him through the relevant pages. Rachel had not been driving. Another motorist had run a red light and struck the passenger side of the vehicle. Rachel had sustained 3 broken ribs, a fractured collarbone, and a serious spinal injury. Her dependency on pain medication had developed during the long months of her physical recovery. Evelyn had taken those facts and turned them backward. She had told the family, the neighbors, and the court system a version in which Rachel was reckless, unstable, and responsible for her husband's death. It was not a misunderstanding. It was a decision. Bennett set the report down. Child Welfare reviewed her current status this morning, she said. Sobriety maintained, employment stable, counseling current, housing secured. She looked at Marcus. They've approved a trial reunification weekend. It starts Friday. The next 3 days moved with a quiet kind of purpose. Rachel cleaned the apartment on Tuesday morning. She scrubbed the kitchen counters twice, lined the shelves with paper she bought herself, and arranged the few things she owned in a way that left room for 2 children she had not lived with in too long. She placed 2 new toothbrushes in the bathroom holder. She put a glass of pencils on the kitchen table. Then she sat down and cried for about 10 minutes. Then she got back up. Marcus and the club arrived Tuesday afternoon with a truck bed full of furniture. Bear handled the shelving. He measured twice, leveled everything carefully, and used the good hardware instead of the cheap stuff. He filled 2 walls of the children's room with open shelves, the kind that made it easy to reach things without asking permission, and he left the lower ones empty so Ava and Noah could decide what went there themselves. Kids need to own something, he said, tightening the last bracket. Marcus did not argue with that. 2 other club members brought in the beds. A third carried up a second-hand dresser that someone had painted a clean white. The frame on Ava's bed had a small chip in the corner that Marcus sanded smooth before she ever had to see it. By Wednesday evening, the apartment looked lived in. Not perfect, not a showroom, just warm and real and ready. Denise arrived Thursday morning with 3 bags of groceries and a box of children's books she had collected from neighbors up and down the block. Behind her came a woman Marcus did not recognize carrying 2 bags of folded clothing. Behind that woman came another with a casserole dish still warm from the oven. Rachel stood in the doorway and could not find the right words. She did not need to. Denise hugged her instead, and the others set things down gently and left without making it a production. Helen brought Ava and Noah on Friday afternoon. The social worker, a quiet man named Darren Cole, walked through the apartment with Rachel and reviewed the safety plan point by point. Emergency contacts were posted on the refrigerator. A schedule for the weekend was written out in clear handwriting. Rachel listened to every word and asked 2 careful questions. Darren closed his folder and nodded. "Have a good weekend," he said. And he meant it. After he left, Noah walked slowly through the children's room. He ran one hand along the open shelves. He looked at the bed. He sat on the edge of it and bounced once, cautiously, like he was checking whether it would stay. It stayed. Saturday was the best day any of them had seen in a very long time. Rachel cooked her late husband's favorite meal, a slow pot roast with carrots and potatoes and bread she made herself from a recipe she had kept folded in her wallet through everything. The smell of it filled every room. Noah sat on the kitchen counter and watched her work. Ava stood at the donated piano in the corner of the living room and played a song she had been teaching herself from a book, slow and uneven and entirely wonderful. Sunday morning was quieter and just as good. Marcus stopped by in the late morning. He brought Bear and 4 other club members, and they took Ava and Noah on a slow loop around the block. Noah wore a small helmet that sat slightly too big on his head and laughed so hard at the sound of the engines that he could barely hold on. Ava rode with Marcus, straight-backed and serious, but when they turned the final corner and the apartment came back into view, she was grinning. Rachel watched from the front step with her hand over her mouth. Sunday afternoon came in without warning. It started with a notification on a neighbor's phone. Then another. A local social media page had posted an audio clip. In it, Rachel's voice was thin and unsteady. She said the children might be better without her. Darren Cole called within the hour. Evelyn's attorney had submitted the same clip to the court. Darren arrived at the apartment at 4 o'clock. He was kind about it. He was also firm. Ava understood before he finished explaining. She went to the children's room and began folding her clothes. Noah stood very still in the kitchen doorway, then turned around and quietly slid his drawings under the mattress. Ava set her folded shirt back on the shelf. She did not slam it. She just set it down and turned around and looked at Darren Cole with the kind of stillness that was worse than shouting. "You said this was working," she said. Darren kept his voice even. "Ava, this is temporary. You said that last time." Nobody answered that. There was nothing good to say to it. Rachel moved toward her. Ava stepped back. "I'm not going," Ava said. She said it the way people say things when they have decided, not when they are hoping someone will talk them out of it. "You promised we would stay." "I promised I would try," Rachel said. Her voice broke on the last word. "That's not the same as staying." The room was quiet. The smell of pot roast still hung in the air like a cruelty. Marcus stood near the kitchen doorway. He did not try to fix it. He did not try to explain it. He just stayed where he was so she could see him. Darren guided Ava and Noah gently toward the door. Noah went without arguing. But before he reached the hallway, he stopped at the kitchen counter and picked up the half loaf of bread Rachel had left beside the stove. He folded it inside his jacket, the whole thing, and pressed it against his chest with one arm. Rachel watched him do it and pressed her fingers hard over her mouth. Marcus followed the social worker's car the whole way to the Walsh house. He parked at the curb and waited while Helen brought them inside. Then he knocked on the door and asked if he could stay a while. Helen looked at his face and said, "Yes." He sat in the living room with Noah for an hour. He did not push the boy to talk. He just sat there while Noah drew with one of the crayons from Helen's basket. Slow, careful lines, not showing anyone what was on the paper. Ava stayed in the bedroom. Around 9 o'clock she came out for a glass of water. She walked past Marcus without looking at him. He did not try to stop her. When she came back through, he said quietly, "I'm still here." She went back to the bedroom, but she left the door open a crack. He stayed until both children were in bed and the house was still. Then he drove home and did not sleep much. By Monday morning, the recording was everywhere. Someone had posted it on 3 different platforms. A local news site picked it up by 8 o'clock. The comments were not kind. Rachel's supervisor at the restaurant called at 9. He said he was sorry. He said her shifts were suspended pending review. He said it in the voice of someone who did not know what else to say. The recovery residents called at 10. Her housing sponsor had paused the application. "Nothing permanent yet," they said. just paused. Rachel sat at the kitchen table in the quiet apartment and listened to each call. She did not cry during either one. She waited until both calls were finished. Then she folded her arms on the table and put her head down, and stayed that way for a long time. She met with Family Services Tuesday morning. The staff member, a woman named Carol, reviewed the new filings across a small desk. Rachel answered every question. She kept her hands flat on her knees. Then Carol asked her how she wanted to proceed with the custody petition. Rachel was quiet for a moment. "I don't know," she said. "If staying in this fight keeps hurting them, maybe they're better off without another battle." She said it like someone who had run out of road. The door to the hallway was not fully closed. Ava was sitting on the bench outside. She had been waiting for 20 minutes. She heard every word. She stood up slowly. She walked out the front door of the building without telling anyone. She sat on the concrete steps and stared at the parking lot and did not move. Marcus was in his shop when Bear called him. He heard Bear out. Then he grabbed his jacket off the hook by the door. "I'm going to Evelyn's," he said. Bear's voice was steady. "No, you're not." "She did this, Bear. She leaked that recording. She is watching that family fall apart right now, and she is fine with it." "I know." Bear paused. "And if you show up at that woman's door looking the way you look right now, her attorney will have photographs by nightfall. Every single thing those kids said in that courtroom gets smaller. You understand me?" Marcus stood in the middle of the shop with his jacket in his hand. Bear spoke again, quieter this time. "Go back to the kids." Marcus dropped the jacket on the workbench. He drove to the Walsh house. Helen let him in without a word. She pointed toward the hallway. He found Noah in the bedroom, crouched beside the bed. There were 3 cans tucked under the far edge of the frame. A 4th was in Noah's hand. He looked up at Marcus and did not seem embarrassed. He just looked tired in the way that 7-year-olds should never look tired. Marcus crouched down to the same level and did not say anything about the cans. Ava was sitting in the chair beside the window. She was not looking out. She was just sitting there, very still, with her hands in her lap, staring at nothing. Marcus pulled the other chair close and sat down beside Ava. He did not ask how she was feeling. He did not tell her things would be okay. He just sat in the quiet with her for a while. The way he had learned was sometimes the only honest thing to offer. Outside, the sun was going down. The window held a little orange light at its edge. Finally, Ava spoke. "She said we'd be better without her." "I heard," Marcus said. "She meant it." "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe she was in a very dark place when she said it." Ava turned her head toward him a little. "Not all the way. Just enough." Marcus leaned forward with his elbows on his knees. "You ever have a day where everything feels so broken that you start thinking the people you love would be happier if you just disappeared?" Ava did not answer right away. "Maybe." "That's not the truth talking," he said. "That's the pain talking. And pain is a bad liar." She looked down at her hands. "How do you know the difference?" "You look at what the person actually did," Marcus said. "Not just what they said in one moment. You look at all of it." The room stayed quiet. Noah had climbed onto his bed behind them. Marcus could hear the soft scratch of a crayon moving across paper. Then, Ava asked it. She asked it very carefully, like she had been holding it for a while. "Did you ever think Claire would be better without you?" Marcus did not flinch. He had known the question was in her somewhere. "Yes," he said. "I did." He said it plainly, and he did not look away from her. "After she went into foster care, I told myself I was the reason things went bad for her. I told myself she was probably happier not having me around. I told myself staying away was the kind thing to do." He paused. "I was wrong about all of it. But the guilt felt so real that I stopped reaching out. I stopped trying. And then one day it was too late to try again." Iva was very still. "Your mom saying that in a recording is not your mom choosing to leave," Marcus said. "But you walking out of this without hearing all of it? That might be the one thing that actually separates you two for good. And that would be a shame. Because I've met your mother, Ava, and those words you heard are not the whole story." Ava pressed her lips together. She stared at the floor. "I want to hear the rest," she said, so quietly he almost missed it. "Then I'll make sure you get the chance," he said. Tuesday morning came gray and cool. Marcus drove Ava to the supervised visit himself. Helen had already called ahead. Rachel was waiting in a small room with 2 chairs and a table and a box of tissues that neither of them touched. Ava sat across from her mother. She did not say hello. She said, "Tell me what you meant." Rachel did not pretend she did not know what Ava was asking about. She folded her hands on the table and looked at her daughter without blinking. "Those words are mine," she said. "I did say them. I won't tell you I didn't." Ava waited. "It was the first month," Rachel said. "I was in a very bad place. I was scared and ashamed, and I thought that the kindest thing I could do for you and Noah was to get stable before I asked anything of you. I thought temporary meant weeks, not all of this. I thought I was protecting you by stepping back." "You weren't," Ava said. "No," Rachel said softly. "I wasn't. I was wrong." The room held that for a moment. Then Ava looked at her mother with clear eyes and said, "Don't drop the petition." Rachel blinked. "Ava." "Don't," she said again. "We didn't come all this way." Rachel pressed one hand over her mouth, the same way she had in the apartment when Noah tucked the bread inside his jacket. Her eyes filled. She nodded. That same afternoon, Denise Carter was sorting through a box of donated items for the neighborhood safety group when a thought stopped her cold. She set down the folder she was holding. Evelyn had used a small digital recorder at church planning meetings for years. She used it to take notes, she said. But more than once, Denise had seen her edit those recordings before playing them back for the committee. Cutting parts out, rearranging the order of things. Evelyn had always called it cleaning up the noise. Denise picked up her phone and called Marcus. Marcus answered on the second ring. Denise did not waste time. She told him about the recorder. She told him about the editing. She told him about the locked drawer in the church office where Evelyn stored her meeting materials. Marcus listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said, "Denise, I need you to tell all of that to Detective Bennett, not me, her." There was a short pause. "You think it matters that much?" "I think it could change everything," Marcus said, "but only if it goes through the right hands." He gave her the number. Then he called Bennett himself to let her know Denise was coming. Bennett met Denise at the station that afternoon. Denise sat across from the detective with her hands folded on the table. She was nervous. Marcus could see it in the way she kept smoothing the front of her jacket. But she did not hesitate. She told Bennett everything. The recorder, the editing sessions at church planning meetings, the way Evelyn would play back only certain parts and call the rest background noise. She described the locked drawer in the church office and confirmed she had seen Evelyn place the recorder inside it at least 3 times over the past year. Bennett wrote steadily and asked careful questions. When Denise was done, she looked at the detective and said, "I should have said something sooner. I knew things felt wrong. I just kept telling myself it wasn't my business." Bennett looked up from her notes. "You're saying something now," she said. "That counts." Authorization came through by early evening. 2 investigators met Bennett at the church. The building was quiet and dim. A deacon let them in without argument after the paperwork was presented. The office was small and neat. A row of filing cabinets stood along one wall. A desk sat beneath a narrow window that looked out onto the parking lot. The locked drawer was the bottom one on the right. It took less than a minute to open. Inside, wrapped in a cloth pouch, was a small digital recorder. Beside it were 2 memory cards in a plastic case. A laptop sat closed on the desk shelf above. Bennett photographed everything before anyone touched it. The laptop went into an evidence bag. So did the recorder and both memory cards. A technician was already waiting back at the station. Marcus heard about the recovery that night when Bennett called him. She did not tell him everything. She told him enough. "Get some sleep," she said. "We'll know more by morning." Marcus did not sleep much. Wednesday morning arrived cold and pale. Bennett called at 7:43. The technician had worked through the night. The deleted files on the memory cards had been restored, and what they contained changed the shape of everything. The full recording of Rachel was there, not the 30 seconds that had been leaked. All of it. Rachel's voice said what the leaked clip had included. "The children may be better without me." But the recording did not stop there. It kept going. Her voice steadied, and she said clearly, "Until I am healthy, but I will spend every day becoming the mother they deserve." The cut had been precise. Whoever edited the file had removed every word that followed. What remained was designed to sound like surrender. What had actually been said was a promise. The second discovery was just as clear. Evelyn's own voice appeared on a separate file, calm, assured, and recorded during what sounded like a phone conversation. She promised to deliver Rachel's letters. She promised to arrange weekly calls. Her tone was gentle, trustworthy, the voice of a woman who had no intention of keeping a single word she was saying. The leaked clip had been traced overnight to an account connected to Evelyn's legal assistant. Bennett compiled the verified evidence into a packet. Marcus picked it up from the station at 8:30. He drove straight to the foster home, where Rachel was already sitting at the kitchen table with Ava and Noah, waiting for a hearing that was only hours away. He set the folder down in front of them. "Read this," he said. "All of it." Rachel read every page twice. Her hands were steady the first time through. By the second time, they were not. She pressed her fingertips flat against the table when she finished. She breathed slowly. Then she looked at Marcus and said, "She recorded herself making those promises." "She did," Marcus said. Rachel closed the folder. She did not cry. She sat very still for a moment, the way a person does when something they already suspected is finally confirmed, and the confirmation is both a relief and a wound at the same time. Ava had been reading over her mother's shoulder. She straightened up and looked at Marcus. "So the recording they played, the one about us being better without her." She paused. "That was cut." "Yes," Marcus said. Ava looked at her mother. Rachel met her eyes. "I said it," she told Ava. "I'm not going to pretend I didn't. But what I said after it mattered more." Ava was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded once, slowly, like something had shifted into a slightly better position inside her chest. Noah had been drawing at the corner of the table through all of it. He looked up and asked if the folder was the thing that would help them stay together. Marcus told him yes. It was a big part of it. Noah went back to drawing. Rachel called her attorney before 9 o'clock. She read him the key details from the folder. He told her to bring everything to his office within the hour. Rachel went while Helen stayed with the children, and Marcus waited on the porch steps drinking bad coffee from a gas station cup. The attorney moved fast. By midday, he had submitted the complete audio files, the forged letters, the bank records, the accident report, and Evelyn's recorded contradictions to the court. He attached a formal request for an emergency hearing. The court granted it before 3 in the afternoon. Thursday morning, 9 o'clock. The children's therapist came to the foster home that afternoon. Her name was Dr. Reyes. She was small and calm, and she wore glasses that she was always pushing up her nose. She had worked with Ava and Noah since shortly after the rescue. She sat with both of them in the living room, while Rachel waited in the kitchen. She told them the same thing she had told them before, but she said it again because it mattered enough to repeat. They did not have to speak in court. No one would be disappointed in them if they stayed quiet. Their voices belonged to them, and the only reason to use them was if they wanted to. Ava said she wanted to. Dr. Reyes asked her what she wanted to say. Ava thought about it. Then she said, "I want to say that trust isn't about how someone looks or what people think of them. It's about whether they come back when they say they will." Dr. Reyes wrote that down. She told Ava it was exactly the kind of thing a judge needed to hear. Noah did not want to speak out loud, but he held up the drawings he had been working on all morning and asked if those could go instead. Dr. Reyes looked at them carefully. She told him they were powerful. She would make sure the right people knew about them. Rachel spent the late afternoon alone at the kitchen table with a legal pad and a pen. She wrote her statement by hand. She crossed out lines and rewrote them. She did not try to make herself sound better than she had been. She wrote plainly about the accident, about the pain, about how the medication had changed her without her noticing until it had already done its damage. She wrote about shame. She wrote about the calls that never went through and the letters she had kept sending anyway. She did not write Evelyn's version of her life. She wrote her own. When she was finished, she set the pen down and read it through once. Then she folded it and put it in her bag. Helen made a simple dinner that evening: roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans from a can because Noah said canned ones were better, and nobody argued with him, a loaf of soft bread in the center of the table, a pitcher of sweet tea that George kept refilling before anyone's glass got below halfway. Marcus sat at one end. Bear took up most of his chair and part of the one beside it. Rachel sat across from the children. The kitchen was warm and smelled like butter and thyme. Outside, the last of the afternoon light was going orange through the curtains. Bear made Noah laugh twice before the food was even served, which was something of a record even for Bear. George explained quietly to Marcus that he had adjusted the children's bedroom door so it could be secured from the inside. Marcus looked at him and nodded once without saying anything. That one small thing said a lot about George Walsh. After the plates were cleared, Noah spread his drawings out across the table. He laid them out in order like he had been thinking about the sequence for a while. The chained house came first. He had drawn it in dark pencil, the chain thick across the front door, the upstairs window small and high, and the curtains covering it from the inside. Then Rachel in the rain. Standing at the gate with her hand reaching toward it, her face tilted up toward the window. Then Marcus. He had drawn Marcus beneath the window, big and solid, hands at his sides, looking straight up. And finally, the last one. A house with the front door open wide, light coming out of it, figures inside, just shapes, but together. Nobody said anything for a moment. Then Bear cleared his throat quietly and said, "That last one's my favorite." Noah smiled and said it was his too. Ava had been sitting with her hands around her glass. She looked at the drawings and then looked at Rachel. "I'm going to tell the judge that trust is earned," she said, like she was practicing it out loud. "Not given because someone seems nice, earned because they keep showing up." Rachel met her eyes. "You've earned mine," she said. "Every single day since this started." Ava looked down at the table. She was not crying, but she was close. Rachel reached over and covered Ava's hand with her own. "No matter what happens tomorrow," she said, "I will be there, and the day after, and the one after that. The verdict doesn't change that." Ava turned her hand over and held on. Noah had already started drawing again, a small sketch at the corner of a napkin. Marcus recognized the shape of a motorcycle. Marcus left around 9. The night was cold and clear. He pulled on his jacket in the driveway and stood beside his bike for a moment, looking back at the lit windows of the Walsh house. He could see the shapes of people moving inside, the warm square of the kitchen window, Helen washing up at the sink, Bear's large silhouette near the back door, Rachel and the children somewhere deeper in the house. He put on his helmet and started the engine. The sound of it broke open the quiet street, low and steady. He rode home knowing that tomorrow would be hard, that courts were unpredictable, and that justice moved at its own pace, and no folder full of evidence guaranteed anything. He knew all of that. But he also knew that Rachel would walk in there honest, that Ava would speak from something real, that Noah's drawings would say what words could not quite reach, that Denise would tell the truth, and Bennett would present it clearly. They were going in together, every one of them. That was not nothing. That was everything. The family court building was plain and quiet on a Thursday morning. Gray stone outside, fluorescent lights inside, the kind of place that felt smaller than the things that happened in it. They arrived early. Rachel came first with Ava and Noah. She wore a simple navy dress and low heels. Her hair was pulled back. She looked like herself, which was the only thing she had tried for. Ava wore a white blouse and had braided her own hair. Noah wore a collared shirt that was slightly too big in the shoulders, and he carried his drawings in a folder that Dr. Reyes had given him. Marcus arrived minutes later. He wore dark jeans and a clean button-down shirt. No vest. He had thought about that choice quietly and made it without anyone asking him to. He stood near the back wall of the hallway, while Rachel and the children sat on a wooden bench with their attorney. Bear was outside in the parking lot. He had offered to wait there in case anyone needed something. That was Bear, always finding a useful place to stand. Evelyn came through the opposite entrance. She was dressed carefully, pearl earrings, a pressed blazer. She walked with her attorney and did not look at Rachel or the children. Her face was composed the way a face looks when composure requires effort. Detective Bennett arrived with a file box. Denise came alone, in a gray coat, and sat in the gallery without speaking to anyone. She folded her hands in her lap and kept them there. Dr. Reyes sat near Ava and whispered something to her before they were called in. Ava nodded. The courtroom was not large. A family court judge named Judge Patricia Osey presided. She was direct and unhurried. She had reviewed the submissions. She gave each side full time. The prosecutor walked through the evidence piece by piece. The chain, photographs of the doors, the covered windows, the empty refrigerator, the grocery receipts showing Evelyn had used the children's benefits card for her own supplies, the bank records showing years of insurance payments redirected into her personal accounts, the educational trust documents naming Rachel as primary guardian, the accident report that directly contradicted Evelyn's version of events. Then the letters, the birthday cards with pressed flowers inside, the photographs Rachel had mailed from the recovery residence, the drawings Noah had sent in the early months before the mail stopped reaching her. The folder removed from the family home and stored in Evelyn's church supply room. Then the forged replies. Handwriting analysts had compared them to Ava's school documents. The conclusion was clear and stated plainly. Then both versions of the recording. The edited one, was played first. Rachel's voice came through the small courtroom speaker, sounding lost and broken. The children sat very still. Rachel looked at her hands. Then the complete version played. Everyone heard the rest of the sentence. Then they heard Evelyn's voice, calm and unhurried, promising to deliver Rachel's letters and arrange weekly calls. Judge Osei listened without expression. She wrote something down. Rachel testified. She stood at the front of the room and spoke clearly. She talked about the accident, about her husband, about the pain that had not stopped, and the medication that had become something she needed in a way that frightened her. She talked about checking herself into the recovery program voluntarily, about shame, about how shame had made it easier to believe Evelyn's restrictions were deserved. She described every step since then: the program, the counseling, the sobriety, the kitchen job, the transitional housing, the copies of every letter she had sent, the call logs on her phone showing numbers that were answered once and never again. She did not ask for sympathy. She asked for accuracy. She said, "I did not cause the accident that killed my husband. I did develop a dependency recovering from it. I treated it. I am still treating it. And I should have asked harder questions sooner. I own that." She sat down. Evelyn's attorney presented their case. He argued that Rachel's instability posed a continued risk. He referenced the edited recording. Judge Osei stopped him and noted that the complete recording had already been entered into evidence. He moved on. Evelyn was given the opportunity to speak. She spoke about love, about sacrifice, about how everything she had done was driven by her concern for the children's welfare. Noah was sitting 2 rows behind Marcus. Marcus heard him make a small sound, almost too quiet to catch. Not a word, just a sound. The kind of sound a child makes when something does not match what they know to be true. Dr. Reyes addressed the court briefly, presenting her clinical findings on both children. She noted signs of improvement in a stable environment. She noted that both children had expressed independently a clear and consistent desire to live with their mother. Then she told the judge that Ava had asked to speak, and that Noah wished to present something of his own. Judge Osei looked at Ava. "You may come forward," she said. Ava walked to the front of the room steadily. She stood with her hands loosely at her sides. She looked at the judge, and not at the gallery. She said, "I used to think that trustworthy people were the ones who looked safe. Nice clothes, good manners, people other people respected." She paused. "I was wrong about that." She glanced once toward Marcus, then back to the judge. "Marcus never told me to trust him. He just came back every time he said he would. That was it. That was the whole thing." Her voice did not waver. "My mother is doing the same thing now. Every visit, every phone call. Every time she said she would be somewhere, she was there. She doesn't ask me to forget what happened. She just keeps showing up, and I think that matters more than anything else I could tell you." She walked back to her seat. Judge Osei watched her go. Then she looked at Noah. Noah walked up, holding his folder. He opened it and set the drawings on the edge of the bench so the judge could see them. He pointed to each one in turn. The chained house, his mother in the rain, Marcus at the window, the open door. Then he looked up and said simply, "I want to go home. I want food in the kitchen that's for us. And I want the doors to lock from the inside, so we can keep the bad stuff out, not keep us in." He picked up his folder and went back to his seat beside Ava. Judge Osei was quiet for a moment. Then she began. She rejected the edited recording as incomplete and misleading. She addressed the financial fraud, the forgery, the intercepted correspondence, and the physical conditions of the home, She stated plainly that respectability is not protection, and that fear and control disguised as care are not the same thing as love. Then she granted Rachel permanent custody of Ava and Noah, with continued supportive supervision and regular check-ins from their existing caseworker and therapist. The words landed in the room like a door finally swinging open. Ava was on her feet before the sentence was fully finished. Noah was already moving. They crossed the short space between the rows and hit Rachel so hard she had to grab the bench behind her to stay upright. She wrapped both arms around them and held on with everything she had. Her face disappeared into Ava's hair. She was saying something, but it was too quiet to hear. Marcus stood. He slipped out of the row and moved to the hallway. The door swung shut behind him. He stood alone in the corridor, under the fluorescent lights, with his back against the cool wall. He pressed one hand flat against it. He breathed. His chest was tight in a way he had not expected and could not quite manage in a room full of people. He closed his eyes. He thought of Claire. He let himself think of her. Then he exhaled and let the tightness slowly leave. Detective Bennett found Marcus in the hallway. She carried her file box under one arm and stopped a few feet away. She did not say anything right away. She just looked at him the way people look at someone when they are deciding where to begin. "She'll face criminal proceedings," Bennett said. "Child endangerment, fraud, financial exploitation, forgery, evidence tampering." She said each one evenly, the way a person reads a list when the weight of it is already understood. "The insurance payments and the educational trust are being placed under independent protection. A court-appointed administrator. The money stays for the children." Marcus nodded slowly. "Good. It's going to take time to work through the courts, but the charges are solid." She shifted the box under her arm. "You did right, calling us when you did, not trying to handle it yourself." He looked at her. "Wasn't much of a choice." Bennett almost smiled. "Most people make it one anyway." She moved toward the exit. Then she paused and turned back. "Those kids did something today, up there in front of the judge." She shook her head once, quietly. "That was theirs. Nobody gave them that." She walked out. The meeting with Evelyn happened 30 minutes later, in a small side room off the main corridor. Rachel's attorney had requested a counselor be present. Evelyn's attorney sat beside her. Everyone agreed to the terms before anyone sat down. Evelyn looked smaller in that room. The pearl earrings were the same. The pressed blazer was the same. But something behind her eyes had gone very still, the way water goes still just before it freezes. She looked at Rachel and said, "I was afraid. Every day I was afraid. Rachel, I watched you fall apart after David died, and I was terrified of what would happen to those babies." Her voice was steady but thin. "I believed that I was the only person who could hold things together. I believed that." Rachel sat with her hands folded on the table. She let Evelyn finish. Then she said, "I know you were afraid. I believe that." Her voice was quiet but clear. But fear became control, and control became cruelty. Those are not the same things as love, Mom. They never were. Evelyn looked away. "You told my children I didn't want them," Rachel continued. "You wrote letters in my daughter's handwriting. You locked them inside that house. You took their money." She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. "Whatever you told yourself while you were doing those things, the things themselves happened. They happened to Ava. They happened to Noah." The room was very quiet. "I don't know if I will ever be able to forgive you," Rachel said. "I don't know if the children will. But I've learned something in recovery. And it's this. Forgiveness might someday free us from carrying hatred around. That's for us, That's not for you." She looked at her mother steadily. "It will not erase what you did, and it will not restore trust that has to be built from the ground up, if it ever gets built at all." Evelyn pressed her lips together. For a moment it seemed like she might argue. Then something in her face shifted, and she did not. The counselor closed the session gently, and the attorneys moved things along the way attorneys do. Rachel walked out of the room and did not look back. That evening, Ava and Noah said goodbye to Helen and George. There were hugs that lasted longer than anyone planned for. Noah pressed his face against Helen's shoulder, and George crouched down and shook his hand like he was grown, which made Noah stand up a little straighter. Then they carried their bags out to Rachel's car. The apartment was warm and smelled like the soup Marcus had brought by that afternoon. Someone from the club had left bread on the counter and a bowl of fruit that Noah immediately inspected with great seriousness. Ava looked around the small living room. Then she looked at Marcus. "Can you stay?" she asked. "Just tonight." Marcus pulled a chair close to the front room. He sat down, stretched his legs out, and said, "Yeah, kid, I've got nowhere else to be." Friday morning came in quiet and ordinary, which was the best thing it could have been. Rachel made eggs. She scrambled them the way Noah liked, soft and not too done around the edges, and she made toast with the bread Marcus's club had left on the counter. Ava sat at the small table with her knees pulled up onto her chair. Noah sat across from her, already watching the bowl of fruit like it might disappear if he looked away too long. The social worker, a steady and soft-spoken woman named Karen, arrived just after 9. She set a folder on the table, accepted a cup of coffee, and explained everything clearly and without rushing. The Mercer house had been returned to Rachel. But it needed work before anyone could live in it. Real work. The kind that took time and the right people. There was mold along the back wall of the kitchen. The plumbing under the bathroom floor had been leaking for months. The wiring in 2 of the upstairs rooms was not safe, and every lock in the house needed to be replaced. 6 weeks, Karen said. Realistically. Noah looked up from his toast. Then we go home? Then you go home, Karen said. He went back to his toast, satisfied with that. Karen walked them through the plan. During the week, they stayed in the apartment. Every Saturday, they visited the house so the family could see the progress, and Rachel could make decisions about the space. Monday mornings were counseling. Every other Sunday was a community dinner that the neighborhood had started organizing after the hearing. Rachel listened and nodded and wrote things down in a small notebook she had started keeping. Ava listened, too, which Karen noticed. At the end, she looked at Ava and said, "You can ask questions, anytime." Ava considered that. "What if the 6 weeks takes longer?" "Then we adjust," Karen said simply. "But we keep going." Ava seemed to decide that was good enough. Marcus made calls that same afternoon. He had a list he had been building since the hearing. Licensed contractors who owed him favors or simply respected what had happened. Veterans from the rides he organized every year. Half a dozen guys from the club who could swing a hammer or pull wire or haul trash without needing to be asked twice. Church members who had shown up at the community dinners and asked what else they could do. Neighbors who had watched the whole story unfold from their front porches and were ready to stop watching. Bear handled the volunteers. He had a gift for organizing people who did not naturally organize themselves, and he did it without making anyone feel managed. He assigned tasks, kept a schedule on a clipboard he carried everywhere, and brought a cooler full of cold drinks every Saturday morning without fail. The work began the following weekend. The first Saturday, they hauled out everything that could not be saved. Old food, broken furniture, the molded drywall along the kitchen wall. Noah stood on the porch and watched the debris pile grow with the careful attention of someone keeping an inventory. Ava walked through each room slowly, like she was reading them. The chain came off the front door that first morning. One of the contractors removed it with a bolt cutter and set it on the porch. Marcus picked it up without saying anything and put it in the back of his truck. The boards came down from the windows that same day, and the light that came through was something else entirely. It moved across the floors like it was exploring rooms it had never been allowed inside before. Over the weeks that followed, the plumbing was fixed, the wiring was replaced, the mold was cleared, and the walls were sealed and repainted. New locks went on every door, the kind with smooth deadbolts that turned easily from the inside with no key required. Ava chose soft yellow for the living room. She said it looked like sunrise, and nobody argued with that. Noah asked about his upstairs window. He made it clear he wanted to keep it, but he did not want boards. He did not want curtains either. He brought a small lamp from the apartment and placed it on the sill, plugged it in, and turned it on. "So people know someone's home," he said. Marcus stood in the doorway of that room and looked at the lamp for a long moment. He did not say anything. He just nodded. In the backyard, Marcus dug a small garden plot on the side of the house, where the afternoon light came in longest. Bear helped him with the heavier part of the digging. They did not talk much while they worked, which was the comfortable kind of quiet that exists between people who have known each other a long time. At the center of the garden, Marcus set a small wooden plaque. He had made it himself in the shop, sanded it smooth, and burned the letters in by hand. It read, "For Claire and every child whose voice deserved to be heard." Rachel saw it on a Saturday afternoon and stood beside it for a while. She did not ask who Claire was. Marcus had told her the story weeks before. She just placed her hand briefly on top of the plaque, the way you might place a hand on someone's shoulder, and then she went back inside. In the kitchen, Rachel had already started baking. The contractors had put in a new countertop at her request, long and smooth and practical. She brought ingredients from the apartment every Saturday and left something behind each week. Bread first, then cookies, then a lemon cake that disappeared before the volunteers had finished cleanup. By the 5th Saturday, people were arriving on time, partly because of Bear's clipboard, and partly because they wanted to know what Rachel had made. She started keeping a small notebook of orders. On the last Friday of the 6th week, Karen came by the apartment for a final walkthrough. She reviewed the completed inspection reports, went through the checklist with Rachel, and signed what needed to be signed. The house was ready. The next morning, Marcus arrived at the apartment early. Rachel opened the door before he had a chance to knock. Ava and Noah were already dressed. Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and held out a key. It was new and bright, still sharp on the edges the way new keys are before they have been used enough to soften. He held it out to Ava. "Front door," he said. Ava looked at the key. Then she looked at him. She reached out and took it. A year is a long time when you measure it in ordinary things. Rachel had stayed sober. Every day of it. She kept a small calendar on the kitchen wall and made a quiet mark each morning, not because she needed reminding, but because she wanted a record she could see. Something solid. Proof that the days had added up. Her baking had grown past the notebook of orders. It had become something real. She supplied bread to 2 coffee shops on the east side of town and took custom cake orders through a simple card that Denise had helped her design. 3 mornings a week, she drove to the community center kitchen, where she taught a free baking class for other families in recovery programs. She did not talk about herself much during those classes. She mostly just showed people how to measure flour and how to be patient with dough that needed time to rise. Ava had gone back to school in September. Her teacher, a steady woman named Mrs. Okafor, had been briefed ahead of time, and had the good sense not to make a fuss about it. She just showed Ava her seat and told her where the pencils were. Ava had been cautious at first, watching everything, taking her time deciding who was worth trusting. But she had found her footing. She played piano at the fall community dinner and at 2 school events after that, her fingers moving across the keys with a focus that made the room go quiet in the best possible way. Noah no longer hid food. It had stopped gradually, without ceremony, sometime around midwinter. He still checked the refrigerator each morning, but it was not the anxious checking it had been. It was more like greeting something familiar. His sketchbooks had changed, too. The chained house was gone from the pages. Now there were open roads that stretched toward the edges of the paper. There were motorcycles with riders leaning into wide turns. There were birds, and windows full of light, and front doors that stood open. The letter from Evelyn had arrived on a Tuesday in early spring, routed through an approved counselor the way all contact was required to be. It was 2 pages, handwritten, and it arrived in a plain envelope. Ava sat at the kitchen table and read it alone, which was her right and her choice. Evelyn did not make excuses. The letter said that she had spent months working through what she had done, not to arrive at forgiveness, but to arrive at honesty. She wrote that fear had grown into control and that she had confused love with ownership. She said she did not expect Ava to answer. She said she hoped that someday Ava might find that releasing bitterness was something she could do for herself, not for Evelyn. Ava read it twice. She folded it carefully along its original creases and put it in the top drawer of her nightstand. She did not throw it away. She did not answer it. She just let it sit there, which felt like the right thing for now. Rachel had asked, later that evening, if she wanted to talk about it. Ava had thought about it and said no. Then she had sat down at the piano and played for 40 minutes straight, which was its own kind of answer. The anniversary gathering fell on a Saturday in late October, which turned out to be exactly the right kind of day for it. Cool enough for jackets, warm enough in the sun to stand on the porch without minding the air. The maple in the front yard had gone fully red, and the light coming through its leaves made everything below it look like it was lit from the inside. People arrived steadily through the afternoon. Bear came first, as he almost always did, with his cooler of cold drinks and his clipboard that he was pretending not to use anymore, but definitely still was. Helen and George Walsh came and stood quietly near the garden, looking at the plaque the way people look at something they want to remember. Laura Bennett came off duty and brought her sister, who had heard the story and wanted to see the house. Karen arrived with 2 colleagues from child welfare, and Denise brought a pie and 3 neighbors who had been part of the safety group she had started. 2 of Rachel's baking students came together, nervous at first, then less so when Bear handed them each a cold drink and asked about their kids. The church women who had organized the early meals arrived in a group and immediately took over the kitchen in the way that felt like love rather than takeover. Veterans from the club's charity rides filled the backyard. A handful of Ava's classmates from school showed up with a parent or 2 trailing behind them, clearly uncertain whether they belonged at a party with motorcycles parked out front, then deciding that they did. The house was full and warm and loud with the sound of people who had earned their way into the same room. Ava played piano in the living room for a while, a loose and happy set of songs, nothing rehearsed. People drifted in and listened and drifted out again, the way you do when music is playing and the afternoon is easy. Noah sat at the kitchen table with his sketchbook, drawing in the comfortable middle of all of it, his pencil moving steadily while conversations happened around him. Rachel moved between the kitchen and the porch, talking to people, filling plates, laughing at something Bear said that carried through the whole back hallway. Outside, as the light began to soften toward evening, Noah found Marcus by the motorcycles. He did not say much. He just looked up at Marcus with a patient and certain expression, the way he had learned to ask for things without having to worry that the answer would be no. Marcus looked down at him. "Once around the block," he said. Noah nodded like that was already settled. Marcus lifted him up, settled the small helmet onto his head, and buckled the strap carefully under his chin. Noah wrapped his arms around Marcus's sides and held on. The engine came to life with a low rumble that rolled out across the quiet street, and they pulled away from the curb slowly. Ava stood on the porch beside Rachel and watched them go. Rachel watched too, one hand resting on the porch railing. When they rounded the corner and disappeared from sight, she let out a slow breath, the kind that carries something you have been holding for a long time. They came back around the far end of the block a few minutes later, Noah's laugh arriving before the motorcycle did. He was still laughing when Marcus brought it to a stop at the curb and helped him down. Rachel stepped off the porch. She walked over to Marcus and looked at him for a moment, the way people look at someone when words feel too small for the thing they are trying to say. "Thank you," she said, "for saving them." Marcus shook his head, gentle but clear. "They saved themselves," he said, "the minute Ava held that sign up to the window." He glanced over at Ava, who was still on the porch, watching. "I just didn't look away." Rachel held his gaze for a moment. Then she nodded, like she was accepting something she had needed to hear. Inside, the piano started up again. Ava had gone back to the keys, and the sound of it came out through the open front door and spread across the porch and into the early evening air. Noah climbed the steps, pulled off his helmet, and disappeared through the doorway to his sketchbook and his pencil, and the table that was his. Rachel followed him in, the kitchen filled with the smell of the supper she had left warming on the stove. Upstairs, in the window of the room that had once been locked and dark and forgotten, the small lamp Noah had placed on the sill was glowing. The front door stood open to the evening light. I hope you like this story. Please share what's your favorite part of the story and where in the world you are watching from. Have a wonderful day.